Good evening, Barbados. This is Marcia Weeks, and you are watching the Marcia Weeks Show. We're coming to you live from Barbados, beautiful Barbados. And been a lovely Sunday, this February 25th. And there are so many of you who are already logged on. I see Gelbis has been on since 4:24. I wonder why you're on so early, Gelbis. And there's Rameem who's on as well. And we today is a very important day for us. It's about 7.5 months that we have been on this program 4 nights a week, and we have been asking for an opposition here in Barbados, where the present government, had all 30 seats. But that changed on February 10th when Ralph Thorne, a member of parliament of the Barbados Labour Party, decided to cross the floor and he became the leader of the opposition. And tonight we have the leader of the opposition who will be joining us here on the Marcia Week Show. And we have your questions. There's so many questions. I think we've exhausted all the capacity now, because if we were to take any more, we'll be here until tomorrow morning. But people have been sending in their questions, and so I'm going to ask you, as you're logged on, and to please like the show tonight. If you could please like the show, and to share. This is the time that you share and you like. I also have my esteemed panelists who will be joining us, and I'm just waiting on a couple more of them to come in. And let me just welcome you a little bit before they come in. Rameem, good night. Gelbis, I mentioned you earlier. You were first on tonight. Welcome again to the Marcia Week Show, and thank you for your support. Without your support, Merlene, there is no Marcia Week Show. And so we are excited that you've logged on and you're telling others about it. I'm hoping that you are liking the show. Remember now, once you like the show, it's going to cause the algorithm to attract more people to see the show. All right. So you're going to need to like. Loyal Daughter 666, thank you. Thank you, Erwin, for joining. Marcia, thank you. Colin Clark, thank you. Sharon oh my Lord, thank you. I won't be able to call everybody's name tonight. Clive Osborne, thank you. Thank you so very much. Hurricane Writer, thank you. V. Hoy, thank you. Watching from New York, Nigel Newton, Zaire Campbell. Listen, these are the loyal sons and daughters of Barbados. The loyal sons and daughters of Barbados. And we hereby make it known that we are going to stand up as strict guardians of our heritage. That's who we are. And you are joining. I see the numbers are climbing. You are joining. And as you join, we want to say, welcome. This is your space. This is home. This is Barbados. This is where we discuss all things Barbados. Right here. Everything concerning you. We agitate on here. We motivate on here. We mobilize. We educate. We educate right here on the Marcia Week Show. So I'm going to ask you kindly to share. And my esteemed panelists, they are on. They're coming in. I see them coming in. And as they're coming in, we are going to play the national anthem as we normally do. Yes. So we're going to play the national anthem as you share. And as our panelists come right in, they're going to come right in, and you continue to share and to like. Share and to like. Without you joining, there is no Marcia Week Show. And the show is for you. It is for you. It is for Barbados. It is for the people of Barbados. So let's stand to attention as we play the national anthem. Barbados, Barbados. Tonight, it's all about this. It's all about this. This is all of what it's about. It's not about any party. This is a whole non-partisan session. I know that for a lot of you, you don't even understand what that is, especially if you're joining us for the first time. But listen, it is about this, people. And look, the panelists are here and they're coming in right now. I'm just bringing them in one by one. We are so excited. We are so excited. Waiting on the others to turn on their cameras, and they are coming in. Listen, these have all been on. Let me see what's making that noise. There's a noise that's coming through. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Let me just, yes, I think we got it. I think we got it. Good night, lady and gentlemen.
Hello. Welcome,
Good
everybody.
night. Good night, Miss McLean.
That's what she said, ladies. I thought. Let me get.
Worse. I don't.
Let me get serious. Good evening to everybody. Good night.
Good evening. Good night, all. Also.
Good evening. Good night to everyone.
Good night, Caswell.
Good night. I'm truly happy to be here and among friends, and I can say that because I'm seeing 4 friends on the screen. Well, I like myself too, so let's say 5.
Marcia, quickly, I think people may need to mute their mics when they're not speaking because I'm still hearing some noise. So
yes. So when you're not speaking, because because there's so many of us on, including myself, I have to remember to mute my mic. But listen, you all see this. You all see what I have in my hand. This is the Barbados flag, and I don't know if this gets you excited, but it gets me excited. I get excited over this, Miss McLean, Mr.
Yes,
Franklin,
it does.
Mr. Murray, Dr. Ferdinand, because this is what it's all about. Yes, Miss McLean, you were saying something?
I was going to say, as I listened to the anthem, I wanted to say that most times you go to functions and so on, they play just one verse of the national anthem, but you play the entire anthem, which is good because I always wonder why we only hear one, but it's good to hear the entire anthem. So thank you for that. Reminds people of what it says and,
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And Mr. Murray, you heard that anthem and you've been coming on the show for the last about a month. You've been on now and becoming one of our panelists on this show. When you hear the anthem and you see the flag, what's going through your mind?
If you could, good evening, all. Well, I'm a born and bred Barbadian, first of all, and I rank myself in the world as a person who's a Barbadian who happens to be Black. So Barbados, apart from being a person, a human being, Barbados ranks at the top to me. And I had the honor of writing the words when the words for the national anthem were released. I was at the Advocate as a reporter. I had the honor of writing them for the newspaper, typing the newspaper, and I also learned them on the spot that evening. I never forgot them. In addition, I was also around when the first music of the national anthem came out. Mr. Bart wanted to say he wanted beefing up. He didn't quite like it, and they went back to the drawing board and made some adjustments. I was also part of that process of informing the public. Wow. So it is part of me, and I have had the honor of being able to hear it and see it and have it played in many parts of the world, and it always brings a chill and a pride to me as an original Barbadian, like to call myself.
Yes, it does. Wow. It does something to you when you hear it. Dr. Ferdinand, look at it.
Wow. Yes.
Can we hear you? Oh, you have it there as well.
Absolutely. It's a very proud moment, a very proud symbol, a good aspect of pride. Let me put it that way. To be able to be a Barbadian, to be recognized around the world for a specific citizenship, a specific grouping of a country, an independent country, a country that is determining our destiny. It's great to be a part of that type of a nation and not just be lost in a big grouping, even though we have CARICOM, yet in the midst of it to be recognized as an individual territory and to be a citizen and member of that territory. It really is great identification and recognition. I really, really am thankful. Amen. Thankful.
Yes, wonderful. And somebody's saying, just as an aside, that they loved your singing and your preaching today at the healing service. So
Oh, wow.
congratulations,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Franklin himself, the general, who I think he's been on more shows than everybody on here. Even more shows than myself. When I'm out of the island, Mr. Franklin is still on. Mr. Franklin, it's an honor to have you here tonight, sir. And you heard an anthem and you seeing my flag. And you're thinking about this show. What's going in your mind?
First, let me say that it is also an honor for me to be here. If it weren't, I wouldn't be. So my presence alone says that it is an honor to be, because I don't do anything I don't like. And so, no, with the flag and the anthem, I as a boy, I was a cadet from school and a soldier for a little bit, and I was raised on respect for the flag. And when I see people do things with the flag, it gets me. It bothers me to the core. I sometimes even speak to them. When I see people taking the flag and wearing it as a head tie or putting it on the car seat cover, but you don't know how I feel. It hurts, But when I travel and I see that our flags flying among other flags, and then you don't know the pride that beams in my heart. And for the anthem, my favorite line. I always respect the anthem, but it says, "Greater will our nation grow in strength and unity." I said that was also prophetic. So I am a nationalist. I love Barbados. I've had opportunities to live and work elsewhere. I went overseas to train, and the people thought that I would be better served. My service to them out there, and I said, I will work in your Barbados office because I'm not leaving this place. I'm a Barbadian, and I will stick to this place. I breathe my first breath here, and I want to breathe my last here. I ain't going nowhere. It is here I intend to stay. Remember that song?
Listen, he's a singer too. Dr. Ferdinand.
No, I had to do that because Freddie was singing today. Boy, talk about his singing,
Well, you know what? I see. You sing. Miss McLean dances, and I see the actress here. This is Rose Corbin. Good evening.
She dances too. She dances too.
I see Glenn raising his finger, so I don't know if he does something else along with the dancing and the singing.
1 second. Yes, sorry. Mr.
Yeah, I just want to. Yeah, I have while Freddie is an established singer, while Caswell is an aspiring singer, I'll have you know that I am an acknowledged calypsonian. In 2000, the year 2000, I won the celebrity contest with the name of Mr. Hard Lemon and won a car, which I still have to do. So I retired unbeaten in the year 2000. Remember the name. I'm so nationalistic that when they asked me for it, I said it has to be something that represents Barbados. And as a man who grew up liking them, so I said it has to be dumpling. It's not only dumpling, but a hard dumpling. So that was my stage name.
Hard dumpling.
But you know what? Yeah, but this is a triple threat here. We heard her singing, she was dancing, and she was acting. This is the one and only Rose Corbin. Welcome, ma'am.
Indeed. Good evening. Welcome.
Yes, good to see you. Good to see you. I don't know if you know, we can't hear you at the moment.
Yes, okay. I've just unmuted. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, and on the national anthem, whenever it is played, I instinctively stand up at attention at home. I just stand at attention, and my husband joins me there's something about the national anthem. When I'm overseas, like at conferences before, when I used to travel and work, and I heard the national anthem, I used to just want to uncharacteristically scream out, you know. There's just something about the screens, the music, especially played by the Barbados Police Service band now. As we know, the Royal Barbados Police Band, when they play the anthem, I'm not talking about if you hear it live, not pre-recorded, and you see the officers in their uniform. It is something. I just love our anthem. I love my country. I love my people. And I love you all and all the others who are joining us and those who will join us later.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thanks for that opportunity, this opportunity.
Yes. Well, it is indeed a joy to have everyone here tonight. All those who have been laboring and coming on, joining every night, 4 days a week. Some of you 4 days, like as well. Some of you 2, some 1. Kimar, who is always on. Tonight he told me that he had to speak somewhere. He's now becoming, big speaker. And so I know he's going to be late, but I know Kimar is going, he's going to be on. I see everybody. Where is Kimar? Where is Kimar? He's speaking. You okay? Listen, he's getting bigger than the show. What's wrong with you? That's great.
Even in the Bahamas.
They said he's in the Bahamas. I don't think so. But he will be joining us a little later. But ladies, I can now say ladies and gentlemen, we are on tonight because Mr. Ralph Thorne, who was a member of parliament for the Barbados Labour Party, the government that had all the seats in the House, on February 10th, the newspaper reported that he crossed the floor. And 1 week later, he crossed the floor and became our leader of opposition. And 1 week later, became the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party. He appointed 2 opposition senators, and since then he has stood up and represented the people, represented the opposition in Parliament at least twice so far. I want to, before he comes on, he should be joining us at 8 o'clock because he also has another speaking engagement. But I would like for us to talk about Ralph Thorne, the man who, what do we know about him? Let's talk about him because a lot of people like myself, I was meeting him the first time at the Parliament, a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago. That's the first time I met him in person. And so I don't know much about him. And a lot of Barbadians might not know much about him. They know that he's a lawyer and that's it. But I'm going to go to, at this time, I'm going to go to Mr. Murray. He's the most senior among us. And so I'm going to ask him just to share with us some highlights, some things that you think that the public might not know about Mr.
Thank you, Marcy. It's an honor and a privilege. I'm very glad and lucky to be able to ask to do this in this context. Not only as the most senior person, a label which I will wear with distinction, and which I will seek to exert to get privilege on certain occasions, but to know the man, you have to know the community that produced him. They are all parts of our socialization, at home, at school, in the church, in the general neighborhood or what. So you have to be able to, and we're all parts of that. And the way you're socialized helps determine your values, your perception of the world, how you see other people, how you see yourself, how you relate to them. So it's very important. And I say that because Ralph and Mr. Thorne, I have to treat him with even more respect now than before. Mr. Thorne and I come from the same general neighborhood. I came from Chapel Gap, Spooners Hill. He came from Long Gap, Grisette, Spooners Hill. It's all encompassed that Spooners Hill area. And at Spooners Hill, that general area was, in his growing up and my growing up, a basic working class district. Where most of the houses were chattel houses. Barbados is now beginning to emerge out of the doldrums and trying to be established as a viable society in more where walled houses are being improved, etc. Nowadays, the district is still, doesn't have the lavish housing parts that I know of. It probably has moved not only from lower working class, but also has areas of lower middle class or middle class pockets. So it's a more mixed neighborhood, but it has basically retained its geographical boundaries. And Mr. Thorne would have grown up in that neighborhood. My mother and his mother and father were good friends, so there was an intermixing of the families. We went to Grace's Sunday School at one time, not together, but we were exposed to the same influences that. So I lived up a gap. And in that neighborhood, you didn't have paved roads. You had to be living on the front road to get water direct to your house, or telephone or light. We live at the gap, so we had to go down the gap and get water at the standpipe at third time, etc. I remember when the road was first paved. I've never underestimated the importance. It changed our gap altogether. We were able to play in the gap, play cricket, football, go out at night and moonlight night. So it was a different. So those basic things are important to societies. But Mr. Thorne, who's now leader of the opposition, I've seen many leaders of opposition coming to being in Barbados. But it's the first time that I've seen it become such a national event. Normally, it used to be largely institutional for a particular party. But this time it took on national dimensions because of the background of not having had a leader of the opposition since 2018, before 20 after. Yeah, we had one since 2020 second election. But not only that, but I think that they were so determined, so excited, so ravenous were Barbadians for to have a leader of the opposition in a party that had established itself as a viable entity that had done so much for Barbados. I think it dramatized it, and it seemed to have. It was almost like a change of government, where people got fresh glimpses of hope. We can now do better. We can have greater governance. We can now have a better society by keeping the government on its toes. So in that respect, I say it was tremendously important. Mr. Thorne also Mr. Thorne is also standing on the shoulders of a number of people who contributed to Barbadian society, who have been of service to Barbados. So coming from that neighborhood, he's not alone. He's coming from that neighborhood, which would have seen persons like Permanent Secretary Harcourt Williams. We would have seen a top civil servant like an auditor called Norman King, educator called Irvin Oxley, Justice Frank King, Postmaster John Herbert Nels, Central Bank official Jefferson Reeves, Sir MacDonald Blunt, former president of the Barbados Workers Union, one of the original pioneers of the Barbados Workers Union. You would have seen Jeff Brooms, the retired educator. You know of Tom Abbs and Grant Yeb and Lady Abbs. They also live in that same general Spooners Hill, Long Gap, Grisette area. And also what happened in 22, there's another person emerged out of that neighborhood a year out of service. Ian Goodenedge also comes from the same neighborhood. And he would have grown up in a neighborhood where his grandfather, the late Clifford Goodenedge, the original Clifford Goodenedge, he formed something called the Dorcas League back in the 40s, 50s. Yeah. The Dorcas League, named after it was named after a lady called Dorcas in the Bible, who was a close, an early adherent of Jesus Christ, and she spent her entire life sewing clothes for people in the society. So, so there's a tradition of service from that neighborhood. So both Ralph, Mr. Thorne, and both Inga and Devil are standing on the shoulders of men who contributed uh, to Barbados tremendously. And you might ask, in that sense, can, people that want to probably ask, but can any good thing come out of Spoonersville, Grisette's Long Gap? The record will show that lots of good things have come out of it. But Mr. Thorne of himself is the first political figure who has written anything about his early life, a memoir. And if you get the name of it, Whispers of Peace to My Soul, that was published in 2012. I read it. Anybody who reads it, that is giving you a further insight into the man. So he was exposing his thoughts, what makes him take his values way back since 2012 when he had no idea that one day he would become leader of the opposition. So he's not afraid by night convert to the service art, the man who stands by his principle, who lives his life. Like I said also on a earlier occasion, he's gone to. You can probably elaborate on that when you speak to him tonight, Mrs. Weeks. He also went to Codgerton College and did some studies in theology. But if I were to quickly say what I would advise, because we are still celebrating his installation and becoming a leader. We have to give him the reality. You know how.
I want you to hold a minute. Stick a pin there. I want you to give. I'm going to ask you guys to stick around, the panelists, to stick around at the end of it all, and then I want you to give the advice. Okay, so hold that. You've given us so much now on who he is, and thank you. That's why I asked you first, because I know you would have a lot of history. So hold on the advice a little bit, and then we're going to do that at the very end. Let me go to one of the ladies, and it's 7:30 on the clock. So we are going to be as concise as we possibly can, while really sharing what we know of Mr. Thorne. Let me go to Miss Corbin. Mrs. Corbin, can you briefly tell us who is Mr. Thorne? What do you know of him that you think the public might not know?
Yes, please. Thank you. As I said earlier in an earlier session, that I went to Facebook to find out about the man and to hear what he would post on Facebook. And I am reading from November the 14th, a post by him, November the 14th, 2022. And it starts off like this, and it is so appropriate for this time. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Y'all pick up that?
Yeah.
And it was posted on November the 14th, 2022. And then he went on to talk about going to the court to welcome 3 young ladies who were called to the bar. And he ended off that account by saying, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Proverbs 3:5-6, King James Version. That is from the man Ralph Thorne. This would give you an indication of the heart of the man, and that he's unashamed in a public place on social media to talk about God and to pray such prayers and blessings into the lives of others. I do not know him personally, but I speak briefly to 3 occasions where I met him. And I know that if I meet him and recall those events, he would remember. I have seen him in his role closely, in his role as a father, a husband, and a son and son-in-law. 3 occasions, those 3 occasions. As a son and son-in-law, I saw him at St. Mary's Church, accompanying his mother and mother-in-law. They're passed now. And the respect and the care and attention he paid to the 2 elderly ladies. I would have seen him in the role as a father to his 2 younger children. I think the world knows of his affection and love for Tony, his first daughter, his first child. But I saw him close up as a patient, instructive father to the 2 younger ones. I remember to his son Benji, I can't remember the little girl's name, but how he would have talked to them and reasoned with them at a table where I was sitting and where he joined because there was no other space for the 3 of them. And I observed, and that was years ago because Benji now is in his teens. And I would have seen him again as a husband, how he interacted with his wife on 2 occasions with the children, and I observed. And these things showed me, even back then, the kind of spirit he had. I know his sister very well, as Maxine would say, and if he's cut from the same cloth as Marjorie, it is a good piece of cloth, because Marjorie is so gentle and so nice and so sensitive and caring. And sometimes Marjorie is even moved to tears when she speaks about the marginalized and uncaring and insensitivities meted out to other people. So if Mr. Thorne, I call him respectfully Mr. Thorne, is cut from that cloth, well, and as Mr. Murray recounted, he strikes me as a decent person and enclosure. We share a mutual friend, and this friend of hers is matter of fact. She's very close to Mr. Thorne, his wife, children. And she would have seen him interacting with his mother and mother-in-law and his family. And she speaks so highly of him. She speaks so much of his caring spirit, his generosity. And if he were not that, she would be the first to say it and absent herself from that association. So I too can glean from her. We haven't spoken in recent times since this occurrence and what he's done politically, but I know she has the greatest respect for him and his family. And she speaks again of the areas that I recall here, seeing him with his younger children, seeing him with his late mother and mother-in-law, and seeing his interaction with his wife. I wish him well.
Yes.
And as my grandmother says, if it ain't in you, it can't come out. So, that's what she used to say. I know if Maxine and Catherine and the others know that. If it ain't in you, you
Yes.
can't fake it.
Yes.
Got
You
to
can't
be
fake
equal,
it.
and it is not class, it is not social class or address. It is breeding and upbringing. I wish him well as he
Yes.
moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Corbin. Let me go to Reverend Ferdinand Nichols.
Well, I've known Ralph for some years, not very personally, but through my brother's involvement in the legal profession over some years ago. I got to meet him, and I got to know him over the years, of course, with his transition from the Democratic Labour Party to the Barbados Labour Party. We exchanged pleasantries on more than one occasion. And then where we got a bit closer was when I believe, I can't remember if it's a daughter or a son, what gender his children are, to be honest with you. But I know they were in attendance, or one of them was in attendance at the People's Cathedral Primary School, where, of course, all of my children and grandchildren really attended. And so we struck up some exchanges there, conversations there. I've always found him to be a very decent individual, a very honorable individual, a man with tremendous respect for God and for persons such as myself who are ministers and spiritual leaders. He demands from you the things that you believe. And I have been appreciative over the years that I've known him, to exchange our informations and conversations and so on. I've learned quite a lot from him, and in terms of his character, I've learned a lot about him.
Yes.
In terms of his character, and it's a real honor to have him representing the people in Parliament. And I particularly was blessed this morning to be in that healing service and to see him maintain the same demeanor. Nothing changed. His interaction with the people, you actually could get to him, and people embraced him and so on. So I'm looking forward to a feisty individual, but one that carries himself with decency and decorum.
Yes. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Ferdinand Nichols. Let me go to Ms. McLean, a former senator and former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ms. McLean, what do you know of Mr. Ralph Thorne?
Thanks a lot. And I'm going to start by giving him his full title, adding the post-nominal to his name, Mr. Ralph Thorne QC. And he's the kind of person who probably wouldn't bother, but I think is important. But I wrote down a couple of things as people were speaking. I know Glenn captured very well his history. And when I look at Ralph, I see pretty much my family. We're probably of the same size. There were lots of us. There were 11 of us, and I believe there are probably about 10 or so. Rose mentioned his sister Marjorie, who I knew on campus, working on campus as well as studying. But I knew an older sister, Mozelle, who, interestingly enough, she was a bit older than me. Ralph is a bit younger than I am. But as I wrote down train up a child, and the word decent, as Pastor Ferdinand was speaking. And I know that people may say, this is a human being, and a guy, and it seemed to be praising. But I want to say that I had the chance to observe him over the years, because as he would have gone to school. He's about 4 years younger than I am, or so. He's my youngest brother's contemporary. I know his sisters at school. His sister, the older one, the one I mentioned, I've had to interact with several members of his family, whether it is his brother as my medical doctor, a brother who was a teacher when I went to St. Michael's School to a year-head meeting with my godson because his mother was very ill, and things like that. But basically, what I see is the product of a Barbados that really, in other words, he and his family and families like that, as Glenn mentioned, epitomize what it was that Errol Barrow was trying to achieve. In other words, give us opportunity on the basis of merit, and you are able to achieve. I am very familiar with his daughter, Tony, and I refer to her because I remember when she was a teenager, sitting next to her on a plane. And anybody who knows her And she also would have been very much involved in dance, because somebody put up there correctly that he was one of the founders of the dance in Africa.
Yes.
So he's also very well rounded, and I was happy to hear Glenn refer to his book, because that's something that a lot more people need to do. But when I saw his daughter on that flight, and we chatted, ended up chatting for a long time, and one of the things she said at the time, she said, my father, my parents can probably, if people see me and think that because my father is Ralph Thorne, that life is easy. But she said one of the things that her father taught her was you need to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet. So in other words, he supported her in all those ways, but it wasn't a case of my life is comfortable and therefore I can expect my father to just lavish me with all kinds of things. But in other words, she was saying he's teaching me to be strong, to be independent. And so as I get the support of my father, I also believe that I have to chart a path for myself. And I think that is the kind of upbringing that would be part of a parent who understood what it meant to work hard and achieve and get where you want to go by merit. So when I listen to his comments, and you listen, I've been around long enough to hear people, whether it's in private sector, in political life, and so on. You basically you see some people, and as Rose said, if it in you, it can't come out. So in other words, I would end by saying that I see a man who has been able to achieve significantly, but has done so with the basic understanding that one has to be decent, professional, of good character, and to recognize that you didn't get here by yourself, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And I really wish him well. It is a big task that he's taken on, but I think that he is up to it. And I think Glenn captured it nicely in relation to the response of Barbadians. Barbadians are looking for, in this case, people in public life and politicians who demonstrate a commitment to the people. And I trust that with God's help, that will happen. Pastor Ferdinand, I'm sorry I missed the service, but I had a role to perform at my church this morning at the same time, so I have to go back and listen to your singing. Over to you, Marcia. I will check the whole service, but I listen for you.
Well, I don't know. They had some very serious technical problems this morning, to be honest with you,
okay.
Maxine. So I'm not
Okay.
sure how much of the service was captured.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you will be able to give her, show her exactly where that was outside of the show. But Mr. Franklin, sir, do you know Mr. Thorne, and can you share anything with the Barbadian public about this man that we might not know?
Well, I went to school with two of his brothers,
Ah,
and they were decent men, and they come up in the same household, and you don't have that type of upbringing. You don't give it to two and not the other. So I figure that he has that same level of decency that I see in his brothers. He wasn't fortunate enough to go to Commonwealth like the two of them, but he went to Harrison College. I wouldn't hold that against him. And but he is, as Maxine said just now, that he achieved significantly. And I had, despite his humble beginnings, Ralph came, but when you grew up in Barbados, at the time Ralph Thorne grew up, from poor black people, it wasn't easy. You had to achieve what he did. He had to do it despite the odds, and he has become not only a household name in Barbados, he became a household name in Guyana. Because
really?
if you remember, Ralph is an eminent lawyer. And don't let anybody fool you, he's one of the brightest young lawyers that we have in Barbados right now. I still call him young. I'll tell you why later. And he when they had the problems in Guyana with grandeur and the elections and trying to overturn the elections, that kind of stuff, the the opposition in Guyana didn't go around looking in Guyana or any place else. They came to Barbados for Ralph Thorne to put their case. You all remember that. Ralph was among the legal team in Guyana fighting on that case. Ben the Granger was had the election stolen from him.
Mm-hmm.
So Ralph is well respected not only in Barbados. I I am glad that he has reached the point where he's reached, and I said despite all that happened, because I remember, and Glenn would remember too, he was the person who was vying for the nomination in St. Michael Northeast. When that was taken away from him and given to what's her name, and I'm trying not to call her name when I'm talking about serious issues. And despite that, Ralph didn't just throw in the towel and say, well, I done with that, because Ralph, like all business, he didn't come from nowhere. And she came from Sandy Lane, so she got the preference. Even though she moved right out of the dams and pushed Ralph to a side. But Ralph stayed in there. Now he's the leader of the opposition. And I have so much respect for him, because I knew the Ralph Thorne that I knew, and I met, and I observed, and have this great admiration for. I didn't understand how he could sit in that cabinet, it's not cabinet, but in that house, and sometimes I said, say nothing rather than speak up, because Ralph, that was not the type of Ralph that I knew. And I also had some personal experiences with him, and that made me see the measure of the man. Like, I go to employment rights matters at the Labor Department or before the tribunal, and we have lawyers who know that their clients are wrong, and they fight to the end till a decision have to be made against them because they know they're wrong. But that is not the experience I have with Ralph. I have had an occasion to go before the Labor Department, and he's on one side and I'm on the other. And when Ralph hear the cases, Ralph, he wouldn't embarrass his client, but they will have an adjournment. The next thing they come back, the matter is settled.
Yeah.
Because Ralph is decent enough to know that when these poor people who get unfair that work is wrong, that he's not going to try to fight against them from getting the just compensation. And that is something that I will always respect him for. When you treat workers fairly, you and I become friends.
Right.
And I have seen him do that on occasion. And I know that, so he relieved me of having to fight with him, because not that I would have beaten him or anything, because he's a great lawyer and he might have won me despite my being right, because that happens at times. Sometimes depending on the abilities of your lawyer or your counsel.
Yeah.
You might lose even though you had a good case. But Ralph spared me that embarrassment by acknowledging up front that he know that his person was wrong, and he didn't wait for the employer to pay, because some employers would not pay. He made sure the employer paid, and he collected the money and paid me. And then I had to pass it on to my client. So that is the measure of the man that I see him. I see him, not Ralph Thorne, the eloquent speaker and the fellow so knowledgeable and involved in all these other things. I see him as Ralph Thorne, the very decent man,
Yeah.
who very just man, and you see, lawyers feel like they must win, even if they're wrong. That is not Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne goes after justice, and I hope that he continues like that in the house. And I saw him the last time in the house teaching. He's a good teacher too, because but he's not good enough, because nothing could get into Dale Marshall's head. Forgive me for that. But I couldn't resist, even though he was trying his best. He couldn't get that pass. But he was you can see he was confident in what he was saying and very respectful of the speaker. He didn't
Yes.
you saw him, even though I think he went too far when he said that the speaker has all this great knowledge, but that is Ralph. He would not try to insult the speaker or anything like that. And or not put a one below the belt. He's a decent young man, and I just wish we had more people like Ralph in Parliament. I'm not saying I want all of them to come and join the Dems or cross the floor or anything kind of stuff, but if we had people of his caliber, we would have better governance, because Ralph would have stood up to the tyrant that we have. The others refuse to do it. And so I can only say I've seen him around. We've spoken on occasion and stuff, and we've had cordial talks and stuff. But now I hope to be able to have a bit more talks with him, because I intend to help as much as I can to make sure that he make a success of the job of leader of the opposition. So wherever I can, because he has been good to me in my profession, and I will be good to him.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I mean, I've learned a lot about Mr. Thorne, because, oftentimes, especially in the Caribbean, people come to public service and we don't really know much about them. And we hear their names and we hear them speak and we don't know much. I learned tonight that he was from the Schooners Hill area, actually in St. Michael area there. And I didn't know that before. I heard he was an author. That was confirmed tonight. Whispers of Peace to My Soul is what he wrote. And the founder of dance, one of the founders of Dance in Africa. I did not know that. I know his daughter was part of Dance in Africa, but I didn't know that he was one of the founders of Dance in Africa. And I think it's important, Miss McLean add the QC to his name. I didn't know that either. So, I think that this sort of session is important. There are others who are saying, well, we want to get to the issues, but it's important for us to understand and to know who this man is. Let us just do a little housekeeping. We have there are questions that are being sent in to us now, and we're going to try our best to get to those questions. But I do have a sheet of paper here with 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of questions that came in earlier this week, right? And was printed and sent to me today. I have no questions on here of my own. These questions all came from the people of Barbados, the people who are, onto the Marcia Week show, and they heard that Mr. Thorne was going to come on here tonight. So, and by the way, these questions were not, Mr. Thorne has not seen these questions as yet. So this is quite authentic. It's the first time that he is going to, that he's going to see gonna hear the questions tonight. And I can see he's in the green room and he's getting ready. Yes, we needed to share, guys. Can you share? If you have not shared this broadcast this evening, this YouTube link or your Facebook link, we ask you to share it, whether, and to subscribe and to like, make sure that you like it. Yeah, make sure that you like it so that it will increase the algorithm, and we will be able to think. So I know they're getting ready and they're setting up at the moment right now. So please share. Take the time and share. Very important that you do so. As I said, if you're sending questions, I am not sure, you know, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if we're going to be able to answer all of, we're going to be able to ask all the questions. So I'm sure they'll give me a signal when they are ready. When he's properly set up, someone is going to give me a signal to let me know that they're properly set up. And at this time, we know that you are sharing, and we are over 1,000 people here already. And I know that the numbers are going to increase. Yes, Jillian, very good. Jillian has already shared. Yes, Jillian has already shared. Mr. Franklin, I'm going to ask everybody to look at their WhatsApp, all the panelists. If you take a look at your WhatsApp at this time, and while Mr. Franklin gets ready to read Mr. Thorne's bio, as we are going to welcome him in a couple minutes. I'm just waiting on the green light from the technical persons.
But Mrs. Weeks, might I be excused? I have to take care of a matter, but I
Yes.
will listen on. All right,
Yes.
I'll go off camera if you don't mind until I get back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So everybody, if you would, and Mr. Murray is not here, so I'm going to, okay, so I'm hearing that he's ready. Just give us a minute as people, please keep sharing. It's 7:58, and we're going to ask you to keep sharing for us. Yes? Please share. Please share. Thank you so very much. Yes, we are sharing. Thanks to everybody everyone who's logged on tonight, and people are all excited. They were on from after 4 o'clock this evening. People were on, and very good, very good for everybody who's on. Yes. Very good, very good. Keep sharing, keep sharing. Yes, definitely keep sharing. Well, Mr. Franklin, I'm going to ask you, sir, to do the honors of reading the bio of Mr. Ralph Thorne, QC. I'm being told by Miss McLean.
KC.
KC.
I see
The
now.
queen, is dead. Now it is a K.
I see. I'm educated every night on the show. Thank you, Miss McLean. Mr. Franklin?
You know, the government has said that everybody should be senior counsel, SC now. And I don't know how that's going down well, because some lawyers are saying that the government did not make them a QC and the government cannot unmake them a QC, which I agree. And so I think some of them have opted to remain KC and some have remained SC. I do not know what Ralph has sits on that particular position. I don't know what he chooses, but I know that Ralph Thorne didn't care if they call him anything, as long as he's not tied up with he's on already, because I would prefer him.
Yes, he's on. He's here already. So I'm going to ask you.
And he's listening. Okay.
Yes,
before I start reading, I will say to Ralph, and he will know what I'm talking about. And when I say to him that I know that he was born and raised to respect his elders, and I'm just going to say to him, but I was born on the 20th of October 1958. He knows what that means. Ralph?
Such being the case, I was born on August the 13th, 1956. So I'm actually your elder.
Ralph would understand that when he comes.
Older than both of them.
Ralph knows what that means when he comes on. I'll probably let him tell you,
Okay.
But Ralph, was educated at Grace Hill Primary, Wesley Hall Boys, and Harrison College. And then he went on to University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, and then on to Hewlett Law School, where he got his LEC. And of course, everybody's talking about this. I didn't know that Ralph studied for a diploma in theology at Codrington College. It shows the measure of the man that he's not only talking about God now, he has been with God for a long time. Okay. He was admitted to practice in 1984, and he has been admitted to the bars of Barbados, Guyana, Antigua, Grenada, British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, and has appeared as the cricket arbitrations in Jamaica and Trinidad. He's been chairman of an artistic writer for Dance in Africa. And we heard Maxine say, and think he wrote and published his childhood memoir, Whispers of Peace to My Soul, in 2012. Ralph played cricket, Harrison College, for UE, Ipswich, Central. Central this year, it was in St. Thomas. My father was one of the people who served at Central and at Spartan. He is married and has 3 children. He's a baptized Methodist, and as Glenn said, he grew up in the Q Pilgrim and the Wesleyan Holiness Church, because it used to be called the Pilgrim Holiness, and then they changed it to Wesleyan Holiness, so that's why. And so you can see that Ralph is no fly-by-night person. He has been around, and I just remind him, he must honor his upbringing and know that he was born on the 20th of October 1958. So good night, Ralph.
Well, thank you, Caswell, Franklin, and we welcome Mr. Thorne. Sir, we are excited to have you here. We consider ourselves the opposition because we are the people of Barbados. All 280,000 of us make up the opposition of Barbados. And tonight, you are on this program as a leader of the opposition. We don't see you just as the political leader of a party, but tonight we see you as a leader of the opposition. You are carrying the views of the people, the voice of the people, and it is in that capacity that we welcome you to the Marcia Week show, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sure you deserve a lot more than 2 words, but please let those words suffice at this point. Thank you. Thank you very much. Marcia, you do know that I was supposed to be here a few weeks ago.
Yes.
But it did not fit in. And I'll tell you about that. It did not fit in. But I meant that I should be here. And I want to pay tribute to this show. I consider that I am joining your opposition in a real sense, because walking around Barbados, I am now aware that it was this show that was the official opposition in Barbados, because it was 30 of us in that parliament. And I don't think anyone minds that I say that we were boxed into support of a government and everything the government did. Of course, we agreed with some of the things that they did, but I don't think I'm the only person, and this is not to compromise anyone who is left there, but I don't think it is possible for 30 people to agree with absolutely everything that the government does. And somebody has to step out. Somebody has to take a stand. Somebody has to say to the people of Barbados that government should not be a unanimous arrangement of 30 minds. That when a government passes laws, and those laws are not entirely in the interest of people, and when those laws are passed repeatedly, somebody has to step out and say, look, I can no longer speak diplomatically. And if I continue to speak diplomatically, I would be speaking hypocritically. And that is not my upbringing, that is not my orientation. And I step out on a matter of principle. And I've repeated over and over, this is not a personal expedition. This is an expedition in principle. I cannot any longer associate my views, my convictions, my beliefs with those of the government. And I will identify a few pieces of legislation, and not only legislation, but I will identify for you some of the government's policy initiatives, which I found it impossible to support. Let me begin by paying tribute to this show. I want to begin by reading a poem in tribute to this show. I have not always seen all of the episodes, but I want to assure you that whenever the show is done, discussions on the following day are dominated by what was said on this show. This show has been a watershed movement in Barbados. This show has brought truth to national discourse. And truth isn't something that is highly valued today. We're not hearing a lot of truth. In fact, Marcia, Maxine, Caswell, Ferdy, I'm going to make a statement now that will hurt some people, but the government has promoted a culture of mendacity. A lot of lies are being told. In every public discourse that the government undertakes, I hear lies. I mean, lies in cases where you can tell the truth without being hurt, but there's now an entire culture of lies, of mendacity, I call it. And a lot of it is unnecessary, but a lot of it is done because the government is more interested in popularity than it is interested in having the citizens confront truth, the truth that they think will make them unpopular. But Barbadians have had a difficult history. Barbados did not begin with a history of harmony. Conflict has been the nature of our history, so that we understand hurtful truths and we understand how to confront truths that hurt. And government has this way of trying to create a society of happiness, and that happiness, or that false sense of happiness, is based on a foundation of untruths. Make people feel good. One of the strategies for making people feel good: hold a party, hold a fete, let people jump up, and when they have to confront the truths next day, well, a few weeks later you hold another party. And it is in that context that I want to give enormous credit to this movement, this loyal opposition, this program, this movement called the Loyal Opposition, which has become a zone of truth in Barbados. Because outside of this movement, outside of this loyal opposition, outside of this gathering 3-4 days a week, you don't find truth very often in Barbados being told in public discourse. So I want to begin by paying that tribute and by reading a poem. And that poem, I think, reflects the voice of this loyal opposition. It's called "Looking at Your Hands" by the Guyanese poet Martin Carter. And the interesting thing about this poem is that it is different from most poems in that the first line is one word. You don't see many poems that have one word in the first line. It is a word of resistance. And it begins this way: "No, I will not still my voice. I have too much to claim. If you see me looking at books or come into your house, or walking in the sun, know that I look for fire. I have learned from books, dear friend, of men dreaming and living and hungering in a room without a light, who could not die since death was far too poor, who did not sleep to dream, but dreamed to change the world. And so if you see me, looking at your hands, listening when you speak, marching in your ranks, you must know I do not sleep to dream, but dream to change the world. And that is a poem I dedicate to this movement that you have carried over the last year. And I ask you to, I commend it to you, and I hope that you adopt that poem as your voice, as the testimony to the quality of work that you've done over the last year. To that poem, I want to add that many may consider that the leadership of the opposition in the House is prestigious, and that visiting shows like this is not the place where persons holding high office should visit. I resent that and I resist that. That my duty is to travel into all places of resistance, as long as that resistance is lawful, as long as that resistance is legitimate, and to engage with voices, engage with those opinions, engage with those views, even if we don't agree with those views. My role as leader of the opposition in the parliament is to extend my activity beyond the parliament and to reach in to the unglamorous places, the places of little prestige, but places where you may find truth, difficult truths, inconvenient truths, unhappy truths. But if it is true, we will never locate justice unless we find truth. And apart from finding truth, we must tell the truth in our public life. There is this stereotype of a politician in Barbados that he is not a man who is moral. He is this stereotype of the politician. And you see this even in the media. You see this in the established media. A lot of journalists will lionize our ruthlessness in politics. They say that a politician must be ruthless. He must be on the edge of honesty. He must practice the kind of politics in which might is right. And everything that might does becomes right because it comes from might. That power is justified for its own sake. And that if you don't exercise power ruthlessly, you're not a politician. And if you speak of ascending moral ground, if you dare to speak the truth, that you're weak, that you're ineffectual and ineffective as a politician, and that in order to fit into that stereotype of politician, that successful politician, that you must be ruthless and you must be tricky. You must be one inclined to mislead people as long as it creates a path towards political ascendancy in a country. And that's why this program is so important. It is an unglamorous place, but it is a place that politicians must visit, and politicians who are honest, politicians who are unafraid must visit this place and engage with people of all persuasions, because I don't think that everybody on this panel belongs to the same political philosophy. I don't think so. From what I've seen, we've had all views, all opinions contended on this show. But what we've had on this show, what you have had on this show, is mutual respect. And I know men get very sensitive when they hear the word love. What you've had on the show is love. People of different persuasions coming together in a social and political firmament with their different views, but willing to sit together for perhaps 3 times a night every week. I suspect that what joins you is that thing we don't like to talk about, love. So I pause at that point to say that I consider it my duty to be here in this unglamorous place where truth is spoken, unvarnished truth is spoken, truth that hurts people sometimes, but sometimes we need that pain to remind us of the reality that exists in our lives, the reality sometimes that we need to change. And the poem that I read spoke of change. It spoke of men and women who do not sleep to dream, but dream to change the world, that dream to change our world. And I know that in Barbados, there's a lot that needs to be changed. You know that in Barbados, there's a lot that needs to be changed. No one can be comfortable with what is happening in Barbados at this time. Hopefully, we'll get into those details as this program extends itself. But thanks again for inviting me. As I said, this is my duty. This is my duty. I'm not here doing this show a favor. If anything, this show is doing me a favor by giving me the opportunity to reach as many Barbadians as we may do tonight in a way that I could not otherwise have done. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you. Let us have uplifting discussion. And let us not sleep to dream, but let us, by dialogue and discourse, dream to change the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thorne. And on this show, we dream to change Barbados. And the love that you speak of, Mr. Thorne, we say it's a love of country, and which means it's a love of each other. As Barbadians, yes, we love each other. And so we come on 4 times a week, 7 o'clock, we're on because of love of country. Thank you for the affirmation, and thank you for perceiving that and for speaking of it. We appreciate that. And you know, our viewers, and we are now, oh my goodness, we are at about over 1,500 people watching live at the moment, and from all different political persuasion. We know there are people from the government watching, and we welcome you. Those from those who are BLP, DLP. This is not about party. This is totally non-partisan. This is about country, about Barbados. We love this country, and we have some questions that were sent in. All of this week, people were sending in questions, and the first question that we have for you, Mr. Thorne, is concerning the NIS. And the person writes, I'm suggesting that 2 pensions should be restored to public officers, with a government pension available at 33.3 years of service and the NIS pension at the age of mandatory retirement. NIS pensions to public officers may therefore be delayed until the age of mandatory retirement. The question that they're asking is, if you were to receive high office in Barbados, would you change the retirement age back to 65 years?
It's a good thing you didn't give me the questions before. First of all, I'll answer the last question first. What is the best retirement age? I think retirement, the age of retirement is dependent on the age of the society. I don't think there's anything magical about 65 or 67. It depends on what the society needs. Do we have enough people coming behind the persons who are under 60? Do we have enough? And we look at every decade. Do we have enough persons of training and qualification in their 50s, in their 40s, in their 30s, and their 20s? So that I don't think you can look at it just for the sake of a number, as I say, there's nothing magical about a number. There are some people who are healthy at 60. There are some people who are healthy at 65. There are some people who are healthy at 67. I think it is what the country needs. Ultimately, obviously, if a man has put in the number that may be magical is the number of years he's put in. So that rather than looking at 65 or 67, maybe we should look at the other number, which is, I think it used to be 33 and a third. That is the number I think that we need to look at. How much time should we expect from a man or a woman in the public service? How much time should we demand of that person if he's in good health? Should it be 33 and a third? Should it be 40? Should it be 45? I think that's the number we should look at instead of looking at 65 or 67. I think that's how we should do it, because there's a point at which decline sets in. You have a man working 30 years doing the same thing. He will decline. She will decline if she's a lady. So my point is, I think we should look back at that number of years of service, that number of years of service before you can retire with the pension that you receive.
Yes, thank you, sir. Caswell, Mr. Franklin, they're under NIS, question number 4 for you, sir. Are you muted?
I was muted, sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Thorne, you know,
I guess so.
we've been complaining about this show, the retirement age, not necessarily retirement age, but the pensionable age, because there's a difference. The pensionable age for people in the public service varies depending on when you came into the service. And it started on when the politicians first got pensions in 1969. Both parties, the public officer and the politician, both were entitled to receive their pensions at 55. Over the years, it has been increased for our public servants from 55 to 60 to 65 to 67 and now 68. While at the same time, the politicians have lowered theirs from 55 to 50. When the pension debate was ongoing, the Prime Minister was saying, that we will take a look at it. I want to know your views, and if you think that it is reasonable for a politician to retire and get his pension at 50, but other people have to wait now until 68.
Caswell, there are different kinds of service, to be fair. I didn't say different quality, because you can have a poor politician who gets at 55. I'm saying it's a different kind of service. Political service is of a different kind. But although it is of a different kind, I still think that it is public service. And there should be some consistency. The gap should not be as wide as it is if the regular public servant is waiting until 67. I don't see why a politician who starts, let's say, at 40, serves for 10 years, 50, has only to wait another 5 years before he gets his pension. There should be some parity between them. But I still say, Caswell, to you that it is a different kind of service. Political service is generally extremely demanding. And there are some politicians who sacrifice a professional career to do politics. They're professionals, let me say professionals of all types, who will sustain that professional career and do political service for whatever reason they do it. And when he leaves that political career, it is difficult to fit back in to what he was trained to do. So I suspect that is one of the reasons why they give the politician a pension at 55. for that sacrifice, not only
It's,
the
no,
sacrifice.
50. It's 50 now.
50.
They reduced it from 55
Oh,
to
they've
50.
reduced it from 55. I don't know everything, you see. That is early. That is early. I don't know why they would give that level of comfort. And in difficult times, you would want to satisfy people that you live in a society in which you say all persons are equal. And I would think you would want to bring it closer to that of the regular public servant, to bring it down to 50 and to increase the other to 67. There's something not right about that. So I would think that they should bring them closer together. I would think that you shouldn't. The age adjustment should not be going in opposite directions. That one becomes lower and one becomes higher. There's something is wrong with that. To be honest with you, something is wrong with that. As to whether there should be parity, that both should be 67, Caswell, honestly, and this is not self-defensive, but honestly speaking, as I said before, political service is of a different nature. And as I repeat, it involves the suspension sometimes of a career, which he had, which he cannot recapture. So I understand the disparity, but to take them in different directions, I think that's immoral, to be honest with you. I think that's immoral at a time like this. At a time like this when there's so much hardship, at a time when people are enduring hardship, a politician should not be appearing to be making his own situation luxurious or her own situation luxurious.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. On the issue of COVID, we have quite a number of questions. We're choosing at least two so that we don't lose our channel, because if we use the word, we will get into trouble. So we're going to say injection, okay? But we can't ignore these questions that are coming from the public. This person says, there has been considerable concern regarding adverse effects from the jab or the injection, where people are still suffering from these effects, including blood clots, breathing issues, and some deaths, as has been reported worldwide. And let me just interject, Mr. Thorne, to say this person who wrote this question is actually injured from the injection and sent along her doctor's certificate and so on. So I just want to insert that. The government of Barbados made a public announcement during a press conference that it would address these concerns, which was never done, according to this person. Will you be calling on the government to keep their promise? Are you aware of any such reports and data for Barbados?
Could you repeat? Any such reports referring to which kinds of reports? Adverse effects?
The adverse effects and yes, of any data for Barbados. And the next part of the question was, will you be calling on the government to keep their promise to those who have been injured or who have lost loved ones?
Yes, unequivocally yes to the last question, that government has to take responsibility because COVID was managed by the state, by the government. And having been managed by the government must take responsibility for all the consequences that flow from COVID. So the answer to that is yes. That's an easy answer. The other question was if I'm aware of adverse effects.
Yes, reports or any data.
I have to say this very carefully. I happen to know that I want to say this very carefully. Let me not say I happen to know. I think if you reach into the offices of the global health organizations, WHO, I suspect that WHO knows a lot more than we do. And I don't want to speak with authority as a lawyer. You may find that there are doctors who can speak with authority, scientists who can speak with authority. And if I express an opinion I would be trespassing. But I suspect that WHO, in its authoritative position, may be able to and will at some point in time address public concerns as to sequelae, consequences that flow from the COVID experience and the vaccines. But I think it may be irresponsible for me to trespass on an area in which I have no expertise. But I suspect that WHO and the doctors, the professionals, the medical professionals, the scientists, that given time, they will tell you things that you suspect. But I give them the chance to tell you and demand that they tell you. But I don't think a lawyer, or a postman, or a butcher can answer that question with any authority. I certainly can't.
Yes, thank you, sir. The next question in that category says, as opposition leader, what measures would you suggest putting in place to protect the citizens of this country from international drug manufacturers? And to your knowledge, have anyone filed any lawsuits against the Ministry of Health pertaining to the use of the COVID-19 injections?
I understand the global response to COVID. I understand the position of the anti-vaxxers. I understand the position of those who consented. I don't wish to personalize it, but I consented. And I consented initially because I trust the science. But as time passed, I took the first, I took the second, I took the booster, and I started to become a skeptic because it is new. We don't know anything about it. But as I said, the basis for my consent was that I trust science. I really do. It wasn't the first. It wasn't the first pandemic that we've had, and there were pandemics before that science responded to with success, and that is why I personally consented. As I said, I trusted science. Now, there are others who don't, and that is a right that they have. And perhaps it comes down to personal conviction, personal acceptance of science, so that you have essentially two groups: those who don't accept the science, those who accept the science. I wonder if there's not a third category, those who don't trust science. I trust science. I really do. And we trust it every day. We make appointments to see the doctor, the dentist, any person who deals with our body. And I took the position at the time, if I go to my doctor, if I go to my dentist, what is it that prevents me from going to the scientist? I did not subscribe to the conspiracy theories. I really did not. I trusted them. I trusted people. I trusted the scientists when they say that there was a pandemic. There was something called coronavirus. I trusted them. The world saw dead bodies being stored in containers located on sidewalks in New York. That was a matter of fact. I was not prepared to question the cause of death of those persons. They all happened within a specific time period, and I have accepted that they died from complications associated with coronavirus. I accepted that. There are others, the skeptics, who did not accept that. But without trying to argue a case, I want to say that there is and there has been overwhelming evidence of the existence of a pandemic, of something called coronavirus. And the governments quite legitimately sought to find a response to stem the pandemic, to erase the pandemic. And who must they turn to? Science. They turned to science. And they came up with the vaccine. And it was a reasonable response. I think when one weighs the possible responses, the one that is reasonable is the scientific response. A non-response would have been most unreasonable because one, you're leaving your population vulnerable, and two, how do you explain the multiple deaths? The deaths. I mean, the ones that really hit us. Barbadians who could not travel to New York to bury their dead. Dead persons who could not be brought back to Barbados. That's not made up. That's reality. Barbadians here who suffered and died, who were not on a trajectory leading to death when it came. Barbadians who were otherwise healthy. Old Barbadians, not so old Barbadians. All death is tragic, but the most tragic deaths, I thought, were those persons in their 90s. Those old ladies and old men who were going along, I don't want to use the word merrily, but they were going along. Perhaps they had high blood pressure, but they were living with it. Perhaps they had diabetes, they were living with it. But this thing called COVID comes along, downhill. I could not be a skeptic, I could not be a doubter in those circumstances.
Yeah.
I trusted the science, I accepted the science as to the existence of the thing, and having accepted the science as to the existence of the thing, I chose reasonably and rationally to accept the science that presented me with a vaccine. And I took it. I took it knowing that it was new. I took it accepting that the vaccine, like all other medicines, if you taking a medicine, you can go on the internet and read what are the side effects. We couldn't do that in the early days, but with the internet, we can do it now. So that the vaccine...
Mr. Thorne, let me just say, use jab. I don't want him to take us down. So we say jab or injections. I'm sorry.
Jab. Yes, the jab. I think when one weighs the two against the other, not taking and taking, for me, the government's decision to sway people into taking the jab was a reasonable decision. And I repeat, when all things are considered, it may have been an unreasonable response not to have sought to sway people to take the jab. How then do you explain to the citizen the death of his grandmother, who's 92 years old and was going along nicely? How then do you explain to people the death of persons who had what they call comorbidities? And they died. How do you explain that? And as I've said, it was not the first pandemic. But I am not here to convert the skeptics. I'm not here to convert the doubters. My response is that the governments throughout the world, what their response, I think, was politically and morally defensible, and it was politically and morally reasonable. Although some of us had doubts, I probably would. I took the personal decision that I wasn't going to take the booster any longer, because there's a point at which you begin to doubt. There's a point at which you're entitled to doubt, because it is only science. It is man-made. It isn't a medicine from God. It is man-made. But we take the chance.
But I'll ask you, Mr. Thorne.
Yes.
The Barbados experience. I don't want to talk about the rest of the world.
Yes.
Barbados was the first country in the world to use the AstraZeneca jab produced in India.
Is that so?
Yeah, it is so.
Okay.
It came into Barbados a couple of days before the World Health Organization approved it for use. I don't think that was reasonable for Barbados to be the first, and I always say guinea pig, because nobody knew what the vaccine would have done to you. And I do not believe...
Mr. Franklin,
the jab.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I don't believe that Barbados should have been there, because our Prime Minister offered some of those same vials to Trinidad, and Rowley said, no, you keep them. because he wasn't prepared to experiment on his people. So I can understand people accepting the science. My one thing is I don't believe them. I did not believe them from the beginning. I wasn't a doubter, but I did a little bit of reading about vaccines, about these jabs, and I come to the conclusion it was done too quickly, and it was probably not in the best interest. Why couldn't Barbados be the people looking to see if it works? Why put it to see if Barbados isn't going to die from it? And then when Barbados didn't die, then the rest of the world. People were dropping down like flies on the streets in India. They were out of wood for their funeral pyres. And we were here using something made down there. I thought that was unreasonable.
I think,
Thank you.
Marcy, if I may just
No,
interject. for a
hold a
moment.
minute, because this is a topic I know that we can go on, and we have quite a number of questions that came from the audience, and I really want to stick with those, Mr. Reverend. So let's stick, because this can go, Mr. Thorne, can you respond to Caswell, and then we're going to
Yes. I wanted to ask as well, and let us engage, because these are important discussions, really important discussions. This is about our life and about our right to a dignified life and a healthy life. Caswell, do you think it made a difference that it came from India? And you do know I'm interrogating now the cultural issue. Do you think it makes a difference that vaccine came from India and its possible rejection?
No, I didn't think about where it came from. I just used India because there were two places that made it: England and India. The Oxford AstraZeneca, right, made in India, England, and then there was some made under license, but different formula using baboon snot or whatever else is one of the whole things to produce the one in India. And I'm saying there are so many millions of people in India. Why did they choose to use it on this 280,000 people down here? Why were we so privileged that we would get the first? We were the first people to get to use this. Nobody else had it before. And I thought that was unreasonable, and I thought that the government was playing fast and loose with the people of Barbados.
Yes. What was the government on a mission of begging? We got it free, or we paid for it?
No, we got it free, but people want to see it work.
Well, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. And I can understand the concern as to the guinea pig question, but to have had it free, that's unfortunate.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Thorne. We now have a question from Dr. Ferdinand on the cybercrime bill. Dr. Ferdinand?
Well, good evening again, Mr. Thorne. Wonderful to have you on the program with us. And thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be here.
Good evening.
We have a question coming in. As you know, the cybercrime bill has been at the focus for the last several weeks in terms of the violations of persons' privacy and freedoms and so on. The question is, in your opinion, is there a need for the cybercrime bill as it seems to duplicate some aspects of other bills, or should the Computer Misuse Act be amended to include some aspects of the cybercrime bill?
Thanks, Ferdy, and thanks for the man of your ministry this morning. And that's not to distract you. It's lovely to hear you singing and preaching again. The state has always sought to protect people's reputation. A person's reputation is as of much value as his physical person. You can destroy a person by shooting him, and you can destroy a person by saying the nastiest things about him. And it is not a pleasant experience for nasty things to be said about you when they're lies, because it has to be a lie to make it actionable under the laws of defamation. But I became suspicious about the cybercrime bill when it came to Parliament. And I want to tell you that, and I want to tell Barbados, I did not speak on it, not because I did not have difficulties with it, but I know that I was under scrutiny by the government. And I don't mind saying this is true. I knew what I was going to do, and I said, let me maintain my silence in Parliament, and let me proceed to what I knew I was going to do, which is what I did a few weeks ago. Now, that apart, I had my reservations about the cybercrime bill. I felt, and I do feel, that the government has become very sensitive about its reputation. The government has become very sensitive about people speaking negatively of it. And you will notice that every time the government comes into the public domain, it is coming on a mission to maintain its popularity. The government tends not to govern as much as it politics. Let me put that differently. The government is more into politicking in defense of a favorable reputation rather than governing for the good of this country. In other words, they're very sensitive about reputations, who people like and who they don't like. And I therefore had my reservations. And I will say to you that obviously parts of the cybercrime bill represent valid concerns, genuine concerns as to the need to have people's reputations protected. But when we were saying that it is a universal document, Barbados is not the first country that has sought to implement or to pass the cybercrime bill. And I put it this way, a member of the governing party uttered the most appalling statement. He said, I think words to the effect that it was there to stop people from abusing ministers. And I think that is when the cat was let out of the bag. That
yes,
while many of us thought that government was genuinely, or some of us thought that government was genuinely pursuing legislation of universal application, it appears as if government was exploiting the legislation, exploiting an occasion to defend its ministers, to protect itself. And I'll say this as well. This government has created something in Barbados called an influencer. Somebody who is prepared to go into the public domain, to go on Facebook or IG or wherever, and defend the government at all costs. And I use the word cost deliberately. And in some cases, it appears that people do it for reward, that you can get rewarded for defending the government. And there is this pretty word that they've invented, an influencer. And all the word influencer means is that you're a propagandist, that you're spreading government's propaganda. And that tells me that if government is concerned to reward persons who are propagandists, to defend government and to promote government's popularity, the cybercrime bill would also tell me that government would pass that bill in its own self-interest, to defend itself against, not only against untruths, but to defend itself against criticisms which may diminish or reduce the government's popularity. And you should not and you must not pass legislation which is intended to defend the popularity of ministers of government. And in that sense, if that was the motive, if government was exploiting a piece of legislation that has been passed in other countries, if government was passing that legislation, as the young person said, to defend ministers, then that exposes government's motive. That government is more concerned about self-defense and rather than being concerned about the common good, the good of all persons whose reputation suffer. Because I take it that the cybercrime bill would have been for all of us. I take it that it would have been for the benefit of all of us, the use of all of us. But when a spokesman for the government says that it was for government ministers, then the motive is exposed. And then that justifies the concerns that we would have had. But speaking honestly and speaking objectively, there are portions of the bill which were valid. I mean, you know, you really can't attempt to destroy a man. And we do that every day in Barbados. We attempt to destroy people. Other than by shooting them or chopping off the head, we intend to destroy them. And we intend to destroy them by destroying their reputations. And to that extent, a law that is passed to protect the common good, to create a society in which people will respect each other, a law that is passed for that reason is a good law. But the law passed, beg pardon?
I respectfully submit that that law already is on the books. It's a defamation
indeed,
law.
precisely,
Why are we going down the road to put another defamation law on the books?
Excellent point.
And especially
Excellent
at
point.
Section 90 when they say not caring whether it is true or false. So they are going to punish you even if you tell the truth.
Not only punish Caswell, but criminalize defamation.
Yes.
And that was a valid criticism. That already there are defamation laws. If I say something about Caswell and it is untrue, and not only untrue, if it is unfair comment, and if it is intended maliciously to destroy you, you can sue me. And you can have the court order me to compensate you. But the suspicion comes, why threaten to imprison me when the defamation laws say that the punishment should be monetary? Why? We don't know the answer. The answer is not to say that other countries passing it justify it or justifies it. That is an interesting question, Caswell. Why criminalize an activity that is already unlawful in the civil law? Why? Why is the government so insistent on threatening to send people to prison in defense of reputations? That's an interesting question, and I think the government needs to answer that question.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Moving along on the topic of education, and I know that this is very near and dear to your heart. I've listened to about 3 of your speeches since you have crossed the floor, and I realize that this is a big topic for you. The person writes, how would you change the trajectory of our education with no real change in years, nor having the necessary skills which our children require included at the elementary level?
Good. I visited AgriFest this evening. I can't promise you that I know a lot as to what goes on in primary schools. What I do know, and what we all do know, is that uncomfortably large numbers of children are leaving primary school with failure and dismal failure, having done the maths and English, because that is how we judge our children, by their aptitude in maths and English. And when we visited AgriFest this evening and saw the agricultural exhibition, we were asking the question, but should there not be greater focus, greater emphasis, I beg your pardon, on agriculture? That's how we feed ourselves. That's at the heart of culture. The definition of culture is how you feed yourself. And we then had a discussion which related to our own experience in primary school. We used to take the jar and put the blotting paper in it and put a bit of water at the bottom and put our bean between the jar and the blotting paper. And we would grow our plant and we'd take it back to school a few days later and show the teacher the success of the project that they'd given us. And there was an exhibit at that show that demonstrated that agriculture can be brought to young Barbadians in miniature ways. You can, for example, grow plants on a wall in the house, on a wall in the garage, or the little pet bottles you can grow, the little things, the little garnishes that we use and so on. And we started to ask the question, should this be a central part of the primary school curriculum? Should this be a central part of the secondary school curriculum? I have argued before, and I still think that the educational system has served us well. I look at everybody on this panel. All products of the educational system that we've had. All persons of humble origin. I don't know if Ferdy or the exception here. But all persons of humble origin, who it is only education that has brought us in this studio tonight. Our voices are listened to, not because we're good looking, not because people like our names, but because of education. We are the products of a successful project called education in Barbados. And my argument is that the structure, if the structure has elevated the lives, if it has elevated if it has elevated this entire society, if it has created a new society of worthy persons who can teach others, persons whose very existence, whose work benefits the society, is that not a successful project? Structurally, except that it produces failures. Like anything else, it produces failures. Cricket produces failures. Everybody doesn't make 100 every time they bat. And I refer to the AgriFest exhibition because I'm wondering if we really don't need to look at curricular reform within the system. And this has been said before. It has been said, why maths and English? Why judge a child by maths and English when we are trying to feed ourselves as a country? Is not agriculture as important as tourism? Is not manufacturing as important as agriculture? Are not computer studies as important as agriculture? I think our educational system needs to embrace all aptitudes. Persons who may have a difficulty with maths, like a lot of us. Maxine may be the best mathematician on this panel. I can't claim to be Maxine. Must I be excluded because I am not as good at maths as you are? So that I think the main problem within the educational system is curricular. I think we need to broaden it. I think we need to accommodate children who have special talents in areas other than maths. You would notice that I'm speaking about maths and not English because I think English is special. I think language, as one philosopher says, is the most sacred of all human creations. Every discipline that exists you must be able to communicate that discipline in a language, and our language is English, so that English is special. But branching out from English, I think the educational system needs to embrace and accommodate as all children. But structurally, I will continue to speak in defense of the existing structure that we have had, which has seen a Barbados transformed. We have seen it. I have lived it. Caswell, you were born on 20th of October 1958. You're a few days older than I am. Caswell, I have lived and seen. I didn't derive this from any textbook. I have experienced the transformation of Barbados. And that transformation of Barbados is attributable to this precious thing we call the educational system. And for having had some failures, I don't think that disqualifies the system. I don't think it does. So that, yes, we need reform. That's the long answer. That leads to the short answer. Yes, we need reform, but we need curricular reform. I defy anyone to tell me that education has not been the foundational transformative force that has made Barbados what it is today. A modern society, a society that has sent people all over the Caribbean as teachers, as fishermen, in all endeavors. Our educational system did that. I went to KPhil in the late 1970s, Maxine, and I saw more working class Barbadians at KPhil than came from any other country. And it was because Barbados had made a decision to invest in the system that we had, the educational system that not only elevated individual lives out of working class struggle, but elevated an entire society that gave us the opportunity to turn to the world and to offer services, to become, for example, an offshore domain for corporations that was able to populate the Queen Elizabeth Hospital with doctors, that was able to populate that same offshore sector with accountants. That's what I saw. That's what I lived. I didn't read that in a book. That's my experience. And that's why I feel so strongly about it. That's why I feel so passionate about it. And I intend, I'm going to say this again, I intend to offer resistance to a government which intends to dismantle that system for something that has been abandoned elsewhere. I intend to fight it. And this is not a personal mission. This is not an ego trip. This is a mission in defense of this country and the strength of this country and the attempt to undermine the strength of this country. And I go as far as to say this, that the reforms have nothing to do with elevating working class people. I want to say to the government that the so-called reforms may actually ghettoize working class Barbados. That aspirations may be blunted.
True.
How can you look at a boy at the age of 14 and say to him, I think you should be X or Y? 14? I heard Jeff Brooms, an experienced teacher, say, a boy at the age of 14 is not a boy making serious decisions.
True.
From personal experience, when you're 14, the teacher is having hell with you, sometimes to get you to settle down. And if a teacher likes you enough, he would talk to you. That is 13 and 14. Unless you have parents who drive you. As well, my experience at secondary school, a lot of bright boys were experiencing difficulty with decisions, with their future, with deciding what they wanted to be. But now some clever person has decided that at the age of 14, a teacher is going to point at a boy and consign him to some profession that he is supposed to do to the age of 65 or 67. That's wrong. I can't support it. Cannot support it.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. I told you he's passionate about this area. We have Miss Rose Corbin, another Barbadian I mean, and an educator that is really, who's very, very passionate about these proposals by government in the area of education. Ms. Corbin, can you read for us question number 2 from our viewers? Are you muted? Okay, she's here. Okay, go right ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you, Marcia. Please permit me, though, first to say good evening to Mr. Thorne.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. And really great to have you here with us, engaging and conversing in this manner.
Thank you.
On an aside, I want to say you're ready, sir. You're ready for them. On the recent St. Peter Parish meet, the Prime Minister, in response to constituents' concern on education reform, said that she will be inviting you and the president of the DLP. Yes, sir, you look like you're not aware.
No, I didn't watch it. But thanks for the information.
To meet with her to speak on matters pertaining to education reform and to make your input. And that is why I say you're ready, sir. You're ready. And the question here that has been posed is as follows. Our schools appear to be in a state of disrepair. As we move forward, how can we ensure that our schools are properly serviced and that our children and teachers are safe and well protected? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, every week I hear about a school in disrepair, and I want to not to offend anyone by saying, look, the physical disrepair is important, but it's easy to fix that. And I don't know why it becomes front page story, except that you have to send home children, which is not a good thing. But the disrepair in the schools that concern me is the social and psychological disrepair of our children. We have some children in Barbados now who are suffering addiction to screens. I know of that personally. There's an American Medical or Psychiatric Association which says that which has listed it as a mental illness. And we, as well, when we came home on evenings from school, you know where we were going. Well, to the sheep, you go, but you want to get in some cricket.
Yeah.
Social intercourse. The streets are empty now because most children are on the iPad and the phone, and they're into the TikTok, and the TikTok is one of the most dangerous invasions into a child's life. I understand this TikTok thing. It runs. You're telling an entire story, or you're giving a child an entire experience in how much time is it? Minute and a half, 90 seconds, 2 minutes? I don't know. But a child that used to be encouraged to pick up a book or even watch a movie and use his imagination, use his creative intellect, that child now has access to a medium that indicates to him that he can learn an entire story, or he can have an entire experience over a minute and a half. And that is damaging to a child. It damages the child's creative intellect. It damages this thing called imagination. The other psychological disrepair, I call it cultural disrepair, relates to the behavior of children. Nobody can fail to recognize what is happening to our children. Violence. You see it on the WhatsApp videos and so on. And if you're unlucky, you see it on the street. I certainly sit in my office and I can hear the children walking by, And I can hear, I beg their pardon, I can hear the ZR vans, and I can hear the music, but they call it music. I can hear the quality of music, let's call it music, that's being played. And I sit and I wonder how many 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds in that van. And I wonder which nice old lady who may be going to her revival night service the same night, wonder how she's reacting to what she's hearing, because it is unvarnished. I mean, the expletives, the body parts that are mentioned. And you say, what really is happening in our society? The cultural and the moral decay that has visited the lives of children. As I've said elsewhere, we can withstand it. We can withstand it. I can hear somebody cursing the whole day. Maybe it doesn't affect me. But have we ever paused to ask how this affects the children? How this entire miasma of moral decay, of everybody cursing each other, the instinctive response to another is to fight, to stab, to hit somebody with a bat. That is the disrepair that I think is serious in this country. If a school needs a window, you put it on. School needs a door, a school needs cleaning, you clean it, reopen it. That's not the big problem. The big problem in this country is the cultural and moral and psychological decay that is impacting the lives of our children. And I am sorry to say this, but a lot of our adults are responsible for it. How do we elevate the lives of our children out of this cesspit of moral decay that is visiting their lives? How do we do that? How do we do that? Again, you know, there are other societies that reshape or refashion their educational system into creating disciplined children. A few years ago, people around here used to be calling for military service. You put them in a military camp and you discipline them, not understanding what the word discipline meant. What they really meant is militarize them. Do we militarize our children? I think not. But we must find some creative way to turn around this society morally and culturally. How do we do that? I don't have all the answers, but I know we have a crisis on our hands. I know we have a crisis on our hands. Look at our children. Look at how they behave. Look at how they relate to each other. Look at how the computer is affecting them and impacting their lives. Look at all these things. And what response are we giving as adults of higher moral responsibility? What response are we giving? Are we indifferent? Are we proactive? Are we making suggestions to save the educational system? Because it rests within education and the realization that education does not exist within the four walls of a classroom. Education is a wider experience. So I'm not concerned about the physical disrepair. It is the psychological and moral disrepair that is visiting the lives of our children. I don't have the answers. I will never have all the answers. But as I always say, let ideas contend. Let shows like this offer constructive solutions to the problem of the moral and psychological decay that is visiting the lives of our children.
Very well said, Mr. Thorne. Thank you for that question from Mrs. Rose Corbin. We're going to switch, as much as the education has me so all interested. We're going to switch to the Barbados Constitution, and I'm going to call on former Senator Miss Maxine McLean and former Minister of Foreign Affairs to ask to pose this question number one.
Well, thanks, Marcy, and good night, Mr. Thorne. Quickly, I'm not
Maxine, may I pause?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thorne died in 2004 August. I have not stopped being Ralph, and that is for
I'm old school.
You're old school. Maxine, you were my senior at school, and you come in. I should be calling you Miss McLean. Are you calling me Ralph? It is awkward. It is awkward.
Okay, Ralph. That's better.
That's so much better.
So I was saying before I read the question that Marcia, my sister, Marcia, I have a sister called Marcia, by the way.
Okay.
She was the mathematician, not me. She was
Okay.
Mazelle's contemporary, so that's
Okay.
she got
Okay.
the math, not me.
Yeah.
Okay. As you know, these are questions coming straight from our audience, and it is about the Barbados Constitution, and I'll read it as it was put. If the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, then why are acts being passed that do not conform with our Constitution? And how does this create harm to the citizens of Barbados in the judiciary system? That's exactly as it was written. Hope it makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I will answer it this way. I think the caller, the person asking the question, is aware that the Constitution is the supreme law of Barbados, and that any law that comes to Parliament must accord with that Constitution. If it is inconsistent with what the Constitution says, that law becomes unlawful. But to be more precise, let me say this. There are 3 recent bills that came to Parliament. Utilities regulation, the labor clauses legislation, and to a lesser extent, the cybercrime. The utilities regulation bill and the labor clauses bill that came to Parliament did something very interesting. And in my submission, they did something that was unlawful. They seem obsessed. Those 2 pieces of legislation seem to have a preoccupation with empowering a minister. Yes, in the utilities regulation bill, it gave, and I spoke on this, it gave special discretion to a minister. And I've argued that giving special discretion to a minister is just a fancy word. It's giving a minister power. It was giving a minister power to, I have to say this very carefully, to prevent the access of the citizen from, or prevent the citizen having access to the Fair Trading Commission. The Fair Trading Commission is a body set up to regulate utility prices in Barbados. And here was this piece of legislation giving the minister power to block that access. My position was that you were empowering the minister. The legislation, the bill, seemed preoccupied with ministerial power, so that you're creating a dispensation, a legislative dispensation, a legislative culture in which the focus, in which the emphasis is on empowering ministers. That is not government. That is not democratic government. That is tyrannical government. Here you have labor clauses legislation, again doing the same thing. Empower the minister. There is this, you have a dispute between an employer and an employee, and it is saying that the minister can adjudicate that dispute. That is wrong. That is unlawful. A minister, and I have to go the long road in answering this question. Under the law, under the constitutional law, under the constitution of this country, we have something called separation of powers. And when you hear these fancy terms, just separate each word so that you understand what it means. Separation of powers. The Constitution seeks to separate the powers of the state, and the 3 fundamental powers that reside within the state is the power to make law, that is the Parliament, the power to manage, let me start again. The power to manage the day-to-day affairs of the country, that's the Cabinet. The power to make laws, the Cabinet brings laws to the Parliament, and the power to interpret those laws. Those powers are separate. A person who is a judge, a person who is given the power to interpret laws, holds that power exclusively. A minister does not have the power under the constitution of this country to adjudicate anything in the manner that a judge can under the constitution. In other words, a minister is not a judge. He comes with biases. So that if a law gives a minister the power to adjudicate a dispute, to resolve a dispute, and I'm going to use the word adjudicate, to adjudicate a dispute between an employer and an employee, I say to that minister, I say to the Attorney General of this country, I say to the government, that law is unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. But the government seems to be on this trajectory of empowering itself. Every act that comes to Parliament now concerns itself with empowering ministers, with giving ministers powers, and giving ministers powers that they ought not to have. It is beyond the power of a minister, in my submission, my respectful submission, to allow him to block the consumer's right of access to the Fair Trading Commission. It is beyond the power of, it is beyond any legislation to empower a minister to do what only the judiciary is allowed to do, that is to hear labor disputes. Labor disputes are dealt with by the courts. Labor disputes are dealt with by the Employment Rights Tribunal. A minister should not have the power to adjudicate. And I will say this, the closest that a minister comes to adjudication is that process, and it is not adjudication. The closest a minister or a ministry comes to dealing with a dispute, a labor dispute, is where he mediates. And Caswell knows about this because Caswell and I did one or two, I can't remember. We went to the Ministry of Labor. He was representing his person, I was representing my person, and we subjected ourselves to mediation by the officers in the Ministry of Labor. But that mediation was not adjudication. If we had failed to come to an agreement, then we would have gone to mediation, to adjudication, I beg your pardon. We would have gone to the Employment Rights Tribunal. So if anybody seeks to invoke that as ministerial adjudication, it is not adjudication, it is mediation. A minister does not have the power to adjudicate. He cannot. He comes with biases. If one party offended him in some way, if he is a BLP minister and one of the parties before him is a strong supporter of the Dems, what does he do? What does he do? He has a bias. So he cannot be a judicial officer. He cannot make judicial decisions under the constitution of this country. Judicial decisions can only be made by judges who reside in the Supreme Court or by chairmen of the Employment Rights Tribunal. I defy the government to pass that legislation called labor clauses. It is wrong. I believe it is wrong. In my legal submission, it is wrong. And I'm not going to depart from that. I think the government needs to do with that what they did with the other one that they withdrew recently. Cybercrime.
Yes.
Cybercrime. And this talk about if you say that you're anti-worker, that's nonsense. That is a red herring. The government must not be allowed to use a red herring to pass law which is unconstitutional, to pass law which gives powers to a minister that a minister must not and should not and will not have in this country. I say we are reaching a point of tyranny when ministers are being given powers that they should not have under our constitution, or Westminster-style constitution, or constitution that seeks to promote democracy and justice. A minister must not sit and exercise a judicial function. It is wrong, it is constitutionally wrong, and it should not happen. And that is the trend. That is the trend of legislation that is coming before the House of Assembly. And that is the trend of legislation that is being foisted on the people of Barbados, ministerial power. Every time, ministerial power. And then, as I said, in cybercrime, we heard from one of them that the legislation is there to protect ministers. That is not democracy. That is not the rule of the people, because that's what democracy means, Demostratus, rule of the people. That is tyranny. When a government seeks now to empower itself to perform judicial functions. So that I've given the long answer to the short question, that the government is on this trajectory of empowering itself. Look, let me go even to the town hall meetings. I sat at the town hall meetings, said nothing, and the truth is I had a chance to say nothing. Those town hall meetings, you bring in public servants out after 4:30 and you have them sitting down at school hall all 10 o'clock in the night. Let me pause and pay tribute to a gentleman who sat at school with me, Philip Tudor. Beautiful man. former chief technical officer at the Ministry of Transport and Works that we lost, sat with me at school. He is up in all the school halls across Barbados, all 10 o'clock in the night, answering questions. Those town hall meetings should be local government meetings. You don't need a town hall meeting, and they can get angry with me. I'm telling the truth. You don't need a town hall meeting with a prime minister and 5 ministers sitting next to her, with people coming up asking all kinds of questions. Those town hall meetings should be local government meetings. The people in this country know how to deal with the problems within the local area, and that is something we proposed to the government 3-4 years ago, to set up people's assemblies so that the people, the intelligent people in Barbados, can have their own local government meetings and determine if the road needs fixing, and determine if the lighting is not good, and determine if the electricity service needs improvement, and determine if they should have those telephone towers all over the place. People are capable of dealing with their own local problems. You don't need a prime minister and a pantheon of ministers, albeit silent, sitting next to her, deciding or trying to convince people that you need a prime minister there to solve local problems. Simple local problems, bus service. People know how to resolve their own issues, and these should be local town hall meetings with persons referring to the ministry. You don't need a prime minister and 5 ministers there talking about how much money is spent and how the public officers seem not to be doing the work that they should do. And I will tell you this, Marcia, Miss Weeks, that my impression of those town hall meetings, it is another exercise in politicking. It is about how nice you are, how popular you are, and you spend this money, and you don't know where the money is going. Give the people a chance to govern their own affairs. Those town hall meetings are not necessary, because you invite a few of your supporters to come up first and bowl a lot of long hops. Miss Weeks, you probably don't know what is a long hop. Bowl a lot of long hops. Maxine seems to know. She had a lot of brothers. Bowling a lot of long hops. And people pomposetting and parading. Oh, we had a beautiful meeting. Oh, the government is so engaged with the population. Engaged with what population? What? Those should be local government meetings. Yeah. With people deciding what are the problems that are confronting their communities. And then, as we proposed in our report, making a requisition to the government department and saying X or Y is the problem here. Not having public officers all 10 o'clock in the night suffering attacks from the citizens and being accused of all kinds of things, being accused of laziness and neglect and delay in the delivery of public services. No, that should not be happening in a truly democratic society. You empower the citizen at the local level and give him the chance to engage with the government. And when I say the government department that is responsible for the delivery of social services into that community. Those town hall meetings need to be stopped, to be quite frank with you. It is grandstanding. Yeah, farce. And it is an exercise in popularity. A farce, that is the word I use. It's a farce. Doing nothing.
Listen, oh my Lord, you're fired up. It's 9:30 and we still have so many questions to go, but we have
Ralph,
I
just want to tell Ralph, the same thing is happening in the estimates.
Mr. Franklin, hold a second there, please, because we have so many. We have 30 minutes to go. Theory Gittins, I want to say he's 21 and he's watching, and he says, I never thought I would see the day when the inner fold would speak the truth honestly. I'm shedding a tear of joy from hearing Honorable Ralph Thorne, MP to KC. This is a 21-year-old young man, and that's how I felt watching this today. It's refreshing. But because of time, Mr. Franklin, hold that thought, and we're going to try to putting it at the end. We want to get the people's questions through. Kimar, good night. There is a question there on the economy, number 4. Can you read that question? Welcome, Kimar, and can you just quickly read that question for us, number 4? Thank you.
First, good night to you, Marcia. Good night to the panel, and good night and I would like to first publicly congratulate the new opposition leader and political leader of the DLP, Mr. Ralph Thorne,
Thank you, Kipper.
to say how honored I am to be on this panel this evening with you guys and Mr. Thorne. So a question directly from the people. Our current debt is estimated to be over uh, 7 billion US, 14 billion Barbados dollars. Do you have any suggestions on how we can resolve the issue slash reduce, and how do we move our economy in a positive direction given that circumstance?
Kimar can tell you what all of the economists are saying, and the economists are unanimous on this. We read it every day in the paper, that we have borrowed not for purposes of production, but we appear to have borrowed to, one, shore up the foreign exchange dollars situation, and we appear to be borrowing to repay loans, so that the stability that borrowing produces really may be artificial stability. Because if we're not producing, if tourism is not giving the returns that we hope that it would give, it would mean that we are postponing a crisis. But we may not be postponing that crisis. The crisis is very much with us, and unless this economy does something very quickly, and I to be fair to the government, I know that the government is trying. I know that the government is hoping that World Cup will give us that rebound. If World Cup does not give us that rebound, the borrowing may remain just that. Solutions, Kimar, I am not an economist. I don't pretend to be an economist. I don't pretend to be omniscient. I listen to the economists. I listen to doctors on medical issues. I listen to the economists on matters of economics, and I try to understand them. And in trying to understand them, they believe that the prescription, one, is that they may have to raise taxes. I don't think this government wants to raise any more taxes. It may have to sell some of its assets, which may be the more palatable of the solutions, to sell some assets to shore us up, to make that gap between make that fiscal gap a lot shorter, a lot closer. So I don't come here tonight waving any magic wand. I come here tonight under the advice and the guidance from reading of the persons trained in that area, the economists, and they are saying that the government may have put itself in a difficult situation of overborrowing for the purpose of presenting a package of stability, really that has not been stability, that the government ought to have been on a thrust to grow the economy in a real way, not grow an economy by reflecting numbers. Because inflation, the incidence of inflation has made it look as if the economy has actually grown. Because when you have inflation, it means that you have more dollars in the economy. Yeah? And that is not real growth. The economists are telling me that's not real growth. That's artificial. It is just playing with numbers. Yeah? But talk to the economists and they will tell you, they will speak to you more extensively on what I've said. So solutions, I don't know if they're going to borrow again. We all know that the solution is to get the economy producing, grow tourism, grow agriculture, no pun intended, have a manufacturing sector that is real and viable. Yeah, those may be the solutions to the crisis of artificial stability that is being presented to us.
Wow, artificial stability. Interesting. Let me ask Dr. Ferdinand Nichols, can you read question number 1 from our audience, please? Thank you.
This is in the section of miscellaneous, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Barbadians, Ralph, in the diaspora.
My apologies. It's question number 2. Number 2. My apologies, sir.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Question, Ralph. Do you believe that our nation can become economically strong again with an economic policy that includes or adheres to godly principles or godliness?
That's an interesting question. And it is a question that implies that to embrace religion offers a solution to national crisis. I don't think that's a political question. I don't think that is a question for politicians to answer. Questions of religious conviction and questions of religious faith are individual questions of conscience involving the right to practice one's religion. But as a national policy, I don't think you can pursue that as a national policy. We don't live in a theocracy. While the Constitution embraces the supremacy of God, while the Constitution embraces the right to practice one's religion, I want to say to the caller that the Constitution is not a religious document. The Constitution is a political document, and it's a legal document. In fact, it is a legal document that embraces political and moral values. It is not a religious document. It defends the right to practice religion, but it is not a religious document. And questions of faith cannot be transfigured into matters of national policy. Faith is personal. Yeah, your belief in God is your belief in God. Your faith is your faith. You cannot force that on a population by way of national policy, economic, political, nor social.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree
Yes,
with that.
totally agree.
Yes,
Totally
Miss McLean. Question number 8 in that section, miscellaneous section.
Sure. Barbados needs a workforce development program for those who lack the skills, education, and are work limited, medical, mental health, substance use limitations, etc. Is there a way that government can work with businesses in Barbados to employ, train, and mentor people who normally would not be given such an opportunity?
If that's the question, they're really asking, do we need to be a more compassionate society? Yes, we need to be a more compassionate society. We need to be a society that embraces everyone, including the less able, including the differently able, including those who are not able. This should not be a society that pursues or chases after only the excellent and the competent and the efficient and those of aptitude. We should be protecting everyone, and that part of that or that mission becomes a part of a democratic socialist philosophy. I know a lot of people in Barbados start to tremble when they hear the words democratic socialism, but those are the philosophies of both the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. For those who are afraid, democratic socialism, a system by which the government, the state, seeks to protect everyone in terms of access to health, access to education, provision of housing or affordable housing. That is democratic socialism, a system democratic in that you allow for your representatives to be chosen democratically by the people, freely by the people, but socialist in that you allow for all persons to have access, fair access to all resources. It is not a dirty word. No. It is a philosophy rooted in justice. It is a philosophy that is practiced across Europe to the countries that we love so much, Norway and Scandinavia and Sweden. When a child is born in those countries, he is almost guaranteed a life of safety and social security and comfort based on democratic socialist principles. So when people talk about democratic socialism, you're not talking about communism. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about protecting your citizens, protecting the most vulnerable, allowing the most vulnerable to have a chance at a reasonably good life. That is what it means. So I think that is what the caller is speaking about, that you cannot have a society that caters to the excellent, caters to the rich, caters to the middle, and leaves behind a whole segment of persons. This society needs to be more compassionate. In many ways, we need to be more compassionate. That's the long answer to the short question. And the answer, a short answer would have been, yes, let us protect our people. Yes, let us be compassionate. But I've given the long answer because we need to establish principles by which we formulate policy. And those principles are based, generally speaking, in this part of the world, this part of the Caribbean, this entire Caribbean, from Jamaica down to Trinidad, Guyana, on the principles of democratic socialism, which give everyone a right of fair access to the resources of the country.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Thorne. Kimar, I think you have another question from another viewer. It's number 5. Kimar? Are you muted? Yes, go ahead.
Right. Mr. Thorne, you often speak about the children and the young in the country. So I would ask you, given the concerns about the same debt situation, what would you say to the children and the grandchildren that are coming up that are concerned about the debt burden that Barbados is in?
To the children?
Yes.
That the country has put itself in a situation in which they may well have to work harder than ordinarily to repay that debt, because some of that debt will fall upon them. And in thinking of the children, not only will some of that debt fall upon them, but one wonders if our children are not pursuing emigration as a means of avoiding the crisis that faces them. We have a situation going on in this country. Nobody wants to talk about it, but there's an ongoing problem of the brain drain, and not only the brain drain, but the flight of human capital. I challenge all of us. You speak to anybody, young parents, 40 to let's say 55, who have children in their teens, and ask them what their children are telling them about their relationship to future Barbados. Too many of our children, 15, 16, up to 25, 30, are making plans to emigrate, to leave us behind in our old age when we become vulnerable again. We have to stem the flight of our young human capital, which will put the NIS in trouble, which will put our own security in trouble, which may make us lonely parents or lonely grandparents, or make us lonely parents at the age when we become grandparents. Too many of our young people are leaving. They're going to Canada, incidentally. Some are going to England. Some are going to the United States. Some may even go to other Caribbean countries. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong here. Our young people have lost faith in the ability of this country to offer them security, and they're leaving. Our people used to leave before, but our people left before looking for good elsewhere. Our young people are leaving because they think that there's no good here, and that's fundamentally problematic in a country that gave my generation so much, gave me a free education, gave me political freedoms, gave me social security. And our young people are thinking differently, and they're leaving. And that is a problem. So that, Kimar, I relate national debt to that. I don't know if they're aware, but that foreign debt is making for a future which may be less comfortable, which may make for a less comfortable society than that which we have had over the last 40, 50 years. And that's a big problem facing this country. And we must all join together and ask our children to invest their confidence in the future of a Barbados that could be prosperous again, that could be safe again, we have a problem on our hands. We have a serious problem on our hands.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Oh boy, there's so many questions that are there, but we ask you, we're closing at 10 o'clock, but what I would like for viewers to know is that we have moderators who are presently capturing as many questions as possible, because I'm reading some amazing questions that are coming in. But the questions that we are asking tonight are questions that have been sent to us over the course of this week, and we have collated everything and reviewed and so on and put together. So if you are not, unfortunately, we weren't able to add any of the new questions tonight, but there's so many. And as I said, we are collecting them with the hope that Mr. Thorne would be able to come back. People are saying they're learning so much from these sessions, and we can always discuss that. If you would like for Mr. Thorne to come back, no pressure, but can you put a thumbs up in the in the comment section, so we will know that we're on the right track. We have had over 1,900 people watching. So go ahead and put a thumbs up for me. They're saying they need a part 2. So put the thumbs up and let us know if we need. Oh Lord, somebody put
I think you're going to get about 1,900 individual thumbs.
People put about 12. Look how many thumbs up from Thelma. Because they have very good questions, Mr. Thorne. We must understand that, we, as you said at the beginning, outside of this kind of show, and sometimes on brass tacks, people, they get an opportunity to ask questions and to just be able to get some honest answers. You did not get any of this beforehand, all right? And nobody paid anybody to say anything. This man is answering questions on the fly, people. He did not know of the questions beforehand, okay? And this is why it's so authentic. Let me ask you the last question, sir. This last question says, what would you say to those people in your constituency who are still angry at you for crossing over? Besides those who might be strictly politically motivated and sponsored, do you think there's anything in your method that you could have done differently and better without compromising your conviction? Would you be open to apologizing to such people if need be?
I accept that some people will be hurt. I want them to appreciate the peculiar situation in which I was located. I have not spoken publicly of the personal and very individual situation in which I was placed. And when I said at State House a few Mondays ago that it was not simple departure, that it was extrication from oppressive circumstances, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I experienced. And what I experienced over the last few years, I have never made it a matter of public discussion. I will say this now, and I will say it again. I know that some will feel hurt, but let me explain this. Sometime last year, a video came out on the internet. Whether it escaped or whether it was sent there deliberately, that's not the issue. And a constituent called me and said, Ralph, we have wondered why you have been in the situation that you have been in. And when we saw and heard and felt that video, we said, now we understand. And he said to me, but having seen that, having observed it, having perceived it, and having interpreted it, we had to say, you committed yourself to representing a constituency, and you did so with dignity, you did so without complaint. I have had other constituents ask me to explain my location in the government, every one of them can tell you, I have never complained. More often than not, I would smile. And on all occasions, I would say nothing. Because my personal circumstance, my personal political circumstance was not as important as my responsibility to represent a constituency. And I went into that constituency and I did social and community work. I sought to get jobs for those who could not. I sought to offer recreation and educational exercises to the children in that constituency. I sought to give comfort to the old, and I would not say how. That is not my politics. I did not focus on my personal circumstances, because my personal circumstances, I felt, were not the people's business. But trust me, Christchurch South, trust me. When I tell you that I had to extricate myself, believe me, I had to extricate myself. And in the peculiar circumstances of extrication, I could not come to the constituency and publicize what I knew I had to do and what I did do. I could not do it for the sake of my own well-being as a human being, for the sake of my own well-being as a political representative. I had to do what I did in the way that I did it. There will come a time when I will speak to you more fully. That time has not come. The time that has apparently come is the time when you have people who are being sent into the constituency to interview and to publicize old persons who are infirm. An old lady who is a double amputee was placed before the television cameras to speak ill of her parliamentary representative. That is what politics is now doing to people, demeaning them, stripping them of their dignity, putting them before television cameras and exploiting them as political objects to further a political agenda. That's not what you do with people. And the fact that this is being done to people would indicate to you the nature of those persons and the quality of their politics, that they would do this to an old woman. That would indicate to you the circumstances that I was in. That is evidence of the circumstances that I was in. That they treat people this way. Everybody now becomes a political object. Whether you're infirm, whether you've lost 2 legs, you are now placed before a camera. And you're placed there to make a political point. That's not right. That is wrong. That is demeaning. That is stripping the lady of her dignity. The lady is not a political object. The lady is a sick woman who is deserving of attention. She is not deserving of that kind of attention, making her a political object. But I say that is evidence of what I endured. And I had to leave, and I have left. And they say easy come, easy go. Clearly it is not easy go. Clearly it is not easy go, because they're all up and down the constituency now campaigning. People of prominence within the Barbados Labour Party, all of a sudden Christchurch South is the most important part of the world. I spent 5 years. 5 years agitating for the South Coast to be fixed, including Thornberry Hill. All of a sudden they can fix it. One night I read a resident of Dover saying, why are they not fixing the South Coast Road? Is it because Thorne is the representative? People know. Trust me, people know. People know what I have endured. Again, I say I did not make it an issue. The issue has not ever been what I endured. The issue has been that of my representation of a constituency. It is not my personal interest that I put before the interest of the constituency. It was that of the constituency which was important. And that is why when people ask me, why is so-and-so the case, or why is so-and-so not the case, I smile. I'm not the issue. Represent the constituency. And when in 2018, some people came to ask me about my circumstances, I said I did not apply for a job on Bay Street. I applied for a job in the Parliament, and the people gave me the job in Parliament, and it has always been my duty to represent them to represent the people of Christchurch South, not from Bay Street, but in the Parliament of Barbados. And in representing the people from the Parliament of Barbados, I took a decision to tell the truth. And I told the truth while I was in the DLP, and I will tell the truth in the DLP. And when I am no longer capable of telling the truth, I will go back to the courts. But I intend to stay where I am and to continue telling the truth for the sake of the people of Christchurch South and for the sake of the people of Barbados. That is what I intend to do. Stop walking across the constituency, holding people up in their infirmity to make political points. It is wrong, it is demeaning, it is stripping the lady of her dignity. Stop it.
Wow. Mr. Thorne, we are so grateful. It's 3 minutes to 10, and we thank you so much, sir, for coming on and answering the questions. We still have quite a number, and no, we did not filter anything. Somebody's asking if we filtered the questions. We might just correct a few grammatical errors, and that's it. I can honestly say that to you. And this is what came from the people, and I am stunned. I was nervous about it, and I thank that for that those who are more seasoned than myself said, do not send the questions.
I'm glad you did it, actually. I'm glad you did it.
Mr. Thorne agreed and said, no, I don't want to see those questions. I want to come on, and because I was nervous. I was nervous. The maternal part of me came in. But those who had more knowledge of this area said, don't do that. Don't do that.
As I said to you, Marcia, I told you today, let's keep it real. That's what the young people say. Let's keep it real. Yeah, we kept it real. But a lot of them were good questions. A lot of them were, they were all good questions.
Yes. People are saying, well done, Mr. Thorne. And somebody says, whoa, imagine when he stands up in Parliament, if he can do this now. And this is why we are grateful. Whatever the color that he's lining up behind, remember on here, we don't think about that. We are cheering for the concept of an opposition. And when Mr. Thorne comes on here, he represents the people of Barbados. He's not here with his party, but he, representing his party alone. He's the leader of the opposition, guys, so the entire Barbados. We need to embrace that. Yes. Now, sir, before you go, this is the Marcia Week show. Before you go, we have a little charge. So everybody on here, they're going to give you a 1 minute charge, a little encouragement, and what the expectation of you, sir. So this is church time. And we literally have 1 minute to do it in, so that we can get him out. He's been sitting there for a long time. All right, so I'm gonna start with the youngest among us. Is that
Caswell? Would that be Caswell?
Stewart. What can you tell Mr. Thorne? Can you give him a charge in 1 minute? Go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
You said give him a what?
A charge, like an encouragement. What do you expect of Mr. Thorne?
Well, I expect to see the same level-headedness in his approach to politics, the genuineness, the openness, and the heart that he's showing for the people. I always admired Ralph Thorne, even when we had the Attorney General talking things all over his face. I've always said that the Prime Minister should really remove the Marshal and make Ralph Thorne the Attorney General. I was saying that since 2018, right? But now God has given us a bigger and better opportunity in having him as the opposition leader. And I pledge my support to him in any way that he needs. And I just want to encourage him to continue to express himself in the way that he's doing, in a limit with the people. And I love the fact that he speaks about God so openly. That is not common among politicians nowadays. We think that some of them worship the other side, which is the devil. But it's refreshing to hear.
Don't say that. I worship Miss Motley. Don't say that.
Right. So thank you, Mr. Thorne. Keep doing what you're doing. It is working on both sides. It is working. So my best wishes to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Kimar.
Thank you, thank you. And Caswell, we are going to put you at the back of the class. We're going to send you outside and let you stand up with one foot in the corner, and hold your ears.
Not the
And
bad
as
foot,
we
no.
leave you tonight, Dr. Ferdinand, what is your charge to the leader of the opposition tonight, sir?
Well, since I have 1 minute and I'm watching my time, I just want to say that it's a pity that government hasn't taken advantage of our public invitations, such as what Mr. Thorne has responded to come and express themselves on this show. This is unprecedented in the sense that we have invited him and he's come, and he's not afraid to come and answer questions. I appreciated very much his position on matters that he may not be the expert on, and he has expressed that. And I'd like to simply say to you, Rav, to keep the level of transparency, accountability, truth, and honesty that we
Thank you
saw
very much.
tonight.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
I
you,
pledge
Freddie.
to assist you in whatever way I can to the advancement and benefit of our country. And as I've mentioned on more than one occasion, that is my primary concern at this stage of my life. What is happening in Barbados that will impact our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren in the future. So I just would expect you to continue in the same demonstration that you have given tonight throughout the rest of the time, however long you pledge your assistance to develop Barbados.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Ferdinand, and thank you for sticking to the 1 minute. Mrs. Rose Corbin, can you in 1 minute? Is she there? I don't think she's there. Oh,
Yes, she
I
is.
saw her, yes.
okay, Mrs. Rose Corbin, in 1 minute, can you give the leader of the opposition a charge?
Yes, please. Thank you for the opportunity. And as soon as, Marcia, you said a charge, the hymn written by Charles Wesley in 1762, a charge to keep I have. And the subject, it speaks to responsibility and watchfulness. And I'll read it quickly. A charge to keep I have, for God to glorify, a never dying soul to save and fit it for the sky. But the second verse I can relate to in terms of Mr. Thorne, to serve the present age. My calling to fulfill. Pardon me if I get a bit emotional here. Oh, may all my powers engage to do my master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live. And oh, thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured, if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. And you've been called to servanthood, Mr. Thorne. In this capacity, fulfill your charge as your heart knows and as you're led. And you look here tonight and you see us. We just represent those that you can't see out there in viral world, but we're here. And I have a commitment to education, and with my colleagues here, we will support when you call, when the need arises. That's my charge, quoting the words from Wesley.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thanks.
Corbin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Corbin. And I want to say that that Mrs. Corbin has been working with a group of viewers here on the area of education reform, and have been looking at that that policy and those ideas that were presented. And I know that they will be willing to support that whatever you're doing, Mr. Thorne, we had a discussion on that, and so
Yes.
you can call on Mrs. Corbin to
Thank you.
support that.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you very much.
Miss Maxine McLean.
Maxine.
Maxine, I
Yes,
go back to
Maxine.
call her Maxine.
Maxine.
What's your charge? I know you preached at church today, but what's your charge to Mr. Thorne?
I'm going to refer to that because he would have probably noticed that I was absent this morning. But I was at St. Stephen's presenting on as part of our celebration of the Black History Month, and I talked about the resilience and accomplishments of our ancestors. Tonight, you shared with us from the heart, I think truthfully, and I believe that the only thing I can say to you and to Barbadians is that having seen and heard you, you have demonstrated a commitment to this country that I have not heard
Oh,
in
Jesus.
the last
Oh, God.
5-6 years. And I am happy. I mean, I am pleased because anybody who knows me would know that I speak of what I consider to be a level of superficiality and mouthings. But I believe that you have shared with Barbadians all that is essentially you. And like my colleagues here, and as Ferdinand said, I have said it before. As soon as you declared, Marcia and so on can attest to this, as soon as you declared that you were leaving and became leader of the opposition, I said then, I pledge your support, whoever you chose, from wherever you chose them,
Thank you.
as your senators. I pledge to support you, and I stay committed to that because I think that this country needs rescuing.
Thank you. Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you so much. And we always give the last word to our general, Mr. Caswell Franklin. Mr. Franklin, what's your charge to Mr. Thorne in 1 minute?
In 1 minute?
Record.
I am going
to try.
history.
No, because if I'm the general, we have the field marshal there. And I will pledge. I'm not going to give a charge. I'm going to pledge to the field marshal that I will be there, whether he wants me to or not. I'm going to be there supporting him. He does not have to seek my help. I will be there offering it because I feel he has a duty to rescue this country from what we have become or what we have fallen into. And what was very happy tonight to see you and to hear you. And somebody wrote in the comments, he said that they were referring to something I said previously, that when on another show, he said, I agreed with Caswell that Mr. Thorne can handle anything that this government can throw at him. Because he just heard you tonight and he is saying that. But I knew that ever since. But I can assure you that you do not have to do that alone. You might be one man in the house, but you got a lot of men out here. I don't know a lot, but what little I know. Huh? What little I know is at your disposal. You have been the one to show that you had gonads. and have stood up
Tall
and decided to fight for the people of Barbados. So you have my support, you have my undying support, you have everything that I can offer. And I can see, Brother Ralph, I know you. I know you will do well. It is not something that I'm hoping. It is something that I know. It is Ralph Thorne that those who know you know that Ralph excels. And we know that you will excel at this opportunity that you've been given. And I say this God-given opportunity because I don't think people say God moves in mysterious ways. Well, this is one of the ways that God has been moving. He moved you to come out here and to take us from bondage. So Ralph, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Franklin. Very well said. And we want to thank everyone for submitting the questions that they did tonight. And it's your These are your questions. This is all about the people. And I'm so happy that you submitted your questions. And we promise you, once Mr. Thorne agrees to come back, I have the questions that were not asked tonight. We have separated those out and we will ask them. And what we're doing, we're also getting the questions in the chat, as many of them as possible, so that, again, it will be about you and not 5 or 6 people on here. It will be about you. For those of you who are asking for us to go half hour later, no, we can't do that to Mr. Thorne. Okay? We told him 10 o'clock, it's 10:12, and we are going to do our best to finish off in 2 minutes. We'll be done and off of here, so that when we ask him again, cover my face, he will say yes and not running and hiding from me. Okay?
Marcia, you must understand that we have held out that invitation to other politicians
That's
in
right.
Parliament,
That's right.
and they have not come.
They have not come.
Mind you, they will go on CBC and comment on things that we say here, because last night someone called me to say that the Prime Minister can't add or subtract, because we subtracted in from this document the estimates, and we spoke on the show, and she came out. She didn't respond to us here. We invited them; all of them can come, but he was the only one who came. And the Prime Minister said that when you subtract these two numbers, the current revenue from the expenditure, that it, mind you, I did the arithmetic myself just to make sure. It's 943 million. She says it's only 400 million. The woman can't subtract. That's probably why she didn't come here, because she would be up to scrutiny. So
Unless, the thing too, it could have been a revised thing. I don't know. But
no. This is the revised document that coming here.
okay.
Yeah, revising this. This is what going to Parliament. This is the one that they have brought to Parliament, and
Yes.
that's what you're saying to Ralph. When Ralph was speaking, you asked me the thing, because they're going to subject public officers to go into Parliament and answer the questions that ministers should be answering, and from this document that the Prime Minister can
Yes.
subtract from.
Well, Mr. Franklin, we will deal with that tomorrow night. Don't forget, we're on at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We're going to look at the continue to educate about the estimates, because I think a lot of people learned a lot from Ms. McLean the last time that we were on, and we are going to share a lot more with you. But let me just repeat a couple words that throughout the charge: justice, Mr. Thorne, justice. These are good words to remember: justice, truth, accountability, honesty, transparency, faith. Those are the recurring words that I heard tonight, and I want to leave those with you. And thank you again, sir.
Yes.
Thank
you.
for gracing us with your presence. You did a wonderful job. And
Thank
to
you very
the
much.
technical team that's there, being led by my husband, Dave
Yes.
Weeks, thank you so much. Trevor Seeley and that other person who doesn't want their name mentioned, thank you so very, very much, all that you have been doing. God bless you all. Thank you, panelists, for coming on. We didn't see Mr. Murray. He had a family situation he had to deal with. Thank you, Mr. Murray, for your support. Thank you, Caswell, for arranging this KEMAR as well. Thank you, Ms. Corbin and Dr. Ferdinand, and of course, Ms. McLean. Thank you for your guidance. God bless you to everybody, and we love you all. Thank you for joining. It's all about the people. We are the voice of the people. God bless you, and have a great night. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
All right.